Hello and welcome to the West Yorkshire Football Show live. It's our end of season review, 2022-2023 season. It's going to be, well, a massive show, Chris. We've got loads of guests lined up. I'm Stephen Brown. Joining me, first of all, is Chris Bell. Chris, what a year it's been, mate.
It has been quite the year.
Pretty awful for most of the teams, but
I was going to say for mostly all the wrong reasons. When losing in the playoffs is the best that any of the sides have done, you know it's been a bad year all around. But we're here to celebrate that fact. So, we're having a bit of a free-for-all, getting everybody on together. And we'll hopefully be a good chin wag about West Yorkshire football.
Yes, absolutely. And if you're enjoying the video, please do like, also for more content across West Yorkshire as well. And also subscribe to the channel as well. Right, let's not mess about. Let's get everyone in here. So, I'd like to say we're joined, as ever, by my streaming partner for Leeds United throughout the season. It's Jason Booker. Jason, how we doing, mate?
Not so bad, mate. Not so bad.
What have you been up to today? What have you been up to
today? Dropping it nice and early. I like
nice
it.
And early.
I've had the absolute honour of playing at Ellen Road today. Play on the pitch experience, managed by Jermaine Beckford and Tony Dorigo. Played around 70 minutes of the 90-minute game. Unfortunately, I couldn't put one in the bag, but it was some experience just playing on the grass and looking up and seeing the stands, the families and all going mad like at the side, like probably about, I don't know, 100 something there. It were wicked. It were great. And like I said,
centre mid you were playing. What kind of midfield are we talking? David Batty? Are we talking box to box? What was going on here?
I usually sit in front of the back four, but today I was playing a little bit more
lazy
of a box to box role. No, the opposite. Oh, you mean normally? Yeah, normally a bit lazy. Just sit in front of the back four and sweep and play the passes. But yeah, today we're a bit more attacking, so I got into some dangerous positions. Couple of people did say I was the best player on the pitch. I mean, I'm just putting it out there. So it were a blast. Like I say, Bex was just on top form the whole day. So yeah, proper tick to box for something that I've always wanted to do. And I definitely recommend it to anybody. And I'll probably do it again. To be fair.
Something nice, isn't it? After a difficult season as well. So something positive around Leeds United, which is good.
Absolutely.
Good evening, Mr. Downs. It's Stephen Downs from the Huddersfield Hub, here to chat all things Huddersfield Town. How are you, mate?
Not bad. How's yourselves?
Very good, very good. You must be a very happy Huddersfield Town fan today.
Yeah, well, like Jace, I've not really been working today, to be honest, for very different reasons. Just checking the thousands of tweets that Town have put out with. It's probably been the best day ever in terms of announcements. So it's been a pretty good day.
Can I just say, Steve, how many episodes have we been through last season since Warnock took over? He's not gonna stay on. He won't stay on. He likes to work for 3 months. I said from the very start he's gonna get it under his skin. And he'll be sticking around. And how pleased I am for you that I was right.
Right, Chris. I have to bow down to your intelligence and knowledge here. You were absolutely spot on. But then again, how many episodes did we have to go through where you praised Matt Fotheringham? So
it's kind of like introduce you as Chris Bell from the Matt Fotheringham fan club. I've got to say.
I can't wait to buy Chris a t-shirt saying that. But anyway, I'm really pleased that he's staying. And yes, Chris, I bow down to your football superior knowledge on that one. You were correct.
Lovely, superb, and we will be chatting all things Huddersfield Town and Warnock throughout the show as well. Also, like to introduce Dave Foy, aka Shaman Stats from Twitter. Dave, how are we doing, mate?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Currently located in Bradford, up Manningham end, aren't you, mate?
Not exactly. I'm at the bottom of Manchester Road, which is just into the city centre. Manningham's on the other side. Manchester Road's out the other side. Yeah, let's just say it's near the police station. Yeah.
You're on the road. He's on the road. You didn't nick that FA trophy, did you? And you're on the dash with it.
No. It's been in Halifax Town Hall today. Perfect time to come past.
Hey boys, he's here.
Get him.
To be fair, Halifax Town, the only team that won a bit of silverware in our region this season. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, after your introduction, I was dying to get that in there. After the best we've all done is a playoff place. Yeah, one of us has been to Wembley and won again.
I was thinking the same thing.
Record.
I was thinking the same thing, mate. Honestly, shocking.
Yeah.
Rounding off the gang, it's of course Mr. Park Avenue. It is Lewis Sale. Big congratulations, Lewis, as well. Recently married.
Thank you.
Does this mean you'll get to still attend all those games? I mean, how many did you do last season?
I don't know. I'm 3 weeks into being married life, but there's no football, so give it maybe a few months and let's see where we go.
I like it when your Twitter says you've been to about 5 games after 6 months. I like, there we go. There's a married man if I ever saw one.
Steve, yeah.
Exactly. Okay, well, let's get cracking then. The big news today, Neil Warnock is staying for another year at Huddersfield Town. We'll come to you first, Steve. Your reaction on that, obviously, you expressed a few thoughts then at the start of the show, but what does this mean for the club going forward? Is it the right choice, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely delighted that he's staying. You couldn't get a better manager in this division that we're in. Also with the ownerships, going through hopefully in the next day or so. Finally, after weeks of hoping it would, it just means that they can concentrate on the bigger picture and Warnock can concentrate on the football side of things. So, to be honest, I think it's a bit of a perfect marriage, and he's managed pretty much half the division, hasn't he? So he's looking forward to coming up against his. I'm looking forward to seeing Jason boo him on the sidelines. To be honest, I think that'd be funny. But
I already said, Steve, it's a guaranteed 6 point for you lot now. Now that he's there,
it's a guaranteed 6 points and it's guaranteed promotion, lads. That's all I'm saying here. No, I'm not going to do what.
Oh, he said it
ahead of himself.
That's getting pinned on the Twitter now.
But in all seriousness, I think it is a brilliant stroke of genius from Kevin. Sharon's obviously happy, so tipping the hat off to Sharon. Thanks for letting him stay. And it's all good. I'm probably the happiest fan on this podcast right now, to be honest.
I think you might be. You might be, actually.
That's saying something as well if he is.
I know.
Jason, now that unfortunately Leeds United are now a championship team, it just makes you realise kind of the competition we're going to face next year. I mean, what do you think, Warnock and Huddersfield? It's kind of going to bring hell for us, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, fair play to Huddersfield. I thought they were dead and buried when Warnock went in there. I didn't think it'd even matter. So to consider what he's done, and like, he is a great manager. It didn't work out for him at Leeds, but it's also not worked out for some other good managers at Leeds as well. So, I don't really carry too much resentment towards Warnock, really. I think he came with the right intentions to Leeds. We were all over the place at the time, but yeah, it's a bit of pill to swallow going into this season. I can't lie, it is. You look at the league table and you have to deal with Rotherham again and have to deal with Town again, like in the nicest possible way. Like it's a bit sickening. It is. Plymouth away, but
try and say something nice, Jace. Try and say something nice.
He did.
Hey, I think that was quite nice from a Leeds fan towards Huddersfield. So I'm starting to look forward to the season now. We're starting to see some movement. There's loads that needs to happen yet. I'm not in the kind of mindset that we'll be definite on for promotion or a top 2 or anything like that. I am not. Me and you have spoken a lot about it, haven't we, Brownie? That, like, I think we've got a lot to do to kind of be considered into that. So just trying to enjoy no football for now, because this last 2 years has been awful. And then hopefully we can start to see some good news come through.
Yeah, absolutely. Elsewhere, Lewis, your beloved Bradford Park Avenue suffered a relegation as well. We had a few relegations across the region this year, unfortunately. Leeds United, Bradford Park Avenue, Liversedge. How are you feeling about it now, a few weeks on from what happened there?
I think it was to be expected over probably the course of half a season-ish. I think it's almost the hope that kills you towards the end, because we were unbeaten in about 6 games prior to the final game of the season. So when you just start thinking we're down, you actually start winning a few games and you start thinking, hang on a minute, are we actually going to perform almost the greatest of great escapes possible? But it was just one step too far towards that final day. We've spoken on the podcast before. There has been mistakes that have happened through the season. Be brutally honest, it's been a failure because we have been relegated. It hasn't been good enough, and the table doesn't lie at the end of the season. So, the club have got a big job. To be fair, they've probably got their act together a little bit over this pre-season already and started to do a few extra things, which is good to see. With a lot more work to do, but in terms of next season already, I think there's a few of us that are cautiously optimistic that with the right team we can kind of push towards the top end of that division. And I think a season of mediocrity might actually do us all the world of good, because after 4 or 5 years of struggle and just being above the relegation places and fighting relegation or being saved because of the COVID pandemic, it takes its toll, not just on the club, but I think the fans as well. So I wouldn't say it's a relief, but it might be one step back, hopefully 2 steps forward.
Yeah, in terms of the current squad, Lewis, there's some good players that have, already committed themselves for next season. Obviously, Jamie Spencer, something that I know well from his time at Guiseley as well, being the key one for me, but others in there as well, like Mitchell today.
Yeah, and I think, at the end of the season, when we spoke at, in the social club, having a chat with people, we wanted a core of players to be there because they are not bad players, but we need a little bit more experience around them to help them through the tougher times. So, I mean, let's be honest, at the moment in that league, there's some really good clubs with some magnificent signings. You'll have to look at Radcliffe, which, you only see through this next season will be challenged up towards the top. But when we've got the likes of George Heights, Ken Worthy signed on, like say Spencer, Luke is now joining the coaching staff as well as playing. Lund is in there as well. Will Longbottom's probably the signing of the season so far because he has attracted interest from the division above. And Brad Doherty hopefully can get himself fit and have a good season. So, yeah, we've lost Reece Staunton and Sam Fielding to Spennymoor. For me, Reece was disappointing. But he's still a young player. He's got a lot of potential, but his quality, I think, is definitely a National League North conference player. And Fielding, was kind of mixed in between different positions, between the back, between the midfield, and was never really consistency there. And, you go down for a reason because you're not good enough. And so hopefully that squad can be rebuilt a little bit. And I think the thing that really I want to see from next season is a bit more of a steelness, a bit of winning mentality, because we've probably lacked that over the past 4 or 5 years. And I think we've got to be a little bit tougher to get some success.
Lewis, how much blame do you put on the management team? I'd just be interested to know your opinion on it because I've not asked you.
Yeah, I think there's a bit. I think there's absolutely a bit. I think, you've probably heard of stuff before. I think there's been mistakes from a lot of places. I don't think there's any denying that Mark and Danny have probably made mistakes. In fact, I know they have, because when they spoke to me at the end of the season, they were saying, there have been games when they've gone and looked back and gone, why did we do this? What have we done that for? But listen, I mean, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? But and we're all human, we all make mistakes. And, let's be honest, if Mark and Danny were that good, they'd be up with Pep and Klopp, wouldn't it? Towards, in the Premier League, and they're not. But I think, listen, they've made mistakes. Recruitment wasn't good enough at all across all quarters of the club. But the good thing for Mark and Danny is that they do have backing from the club and, a certain section of the supporters as well, which is good. There isn't kind of, almost protest to get them out of the club. They've got a bit of a solid foundation to build on. But listen, this next season is going to be huge. If anything, it's probably the biggest season they're going to have.
How much of last season, Lewis, did we spend bemoaning the lack of, recruitment and squad depth? And you look at next season, you say keeping that core of players, but you need to have that better recruitment, that depth that you didn't have last year for coming to the Northern Prem.
We were playing pre-season towards the end of a pre-season campaign, and there were still trialists who never actually signed on. Yeah. You just can't go into that. And for me, that was where we were really severely lacking in terms of actual confirmed numbers, confirmed players, and what your squad looked like. Maybe I'm a bit old school, but I want my team to be ready from that second to last pre-season game, really. And you've got your systems in place, your tactics in place, and you know what your squad's going to be for that first game of the season. We never got it right. I know we've heard on this before about, the likes of Jacob Blythe signing that, there was a lot of potential put into him. Didn't really work out because of the style of football that we wanted to play. Well, again, that's a big mistake because that's your number 9 that you potentially were hoping to, hang your hat on for the rest of the season, and that never really worked out. So, yeah, I think the recruitment is well, I mean, it's vital to any club, isn't it? Between us all on this podcast, I think, especially for next season. But I think for ourselves at Avenue, it needs to happen because we've got our young players, and in this division, it's going to be tough. It's going to be really tough, really physical, and some of our lads are probably not used to this kind of football before. So we need those older heads, experienced players who've been there, done it, and can do the rough and tumble a little bit more, just to help them young lads through.
I did the cons, Lewis, for the Oldham game at the end of pre-season, and it was an absolute nightmare. There literally was like 15 trialists. I think there was 3 first-team players that day. I had no idea who they were. Like, it was an absolute nightmare. And it's funny you should say that, because then later on in the season, you had the situation against Scarborough, didn't you, where Danny Bosch had to register on and put himself on the bench. Yeah. Like I think we had 4 on the bench that day, and Danny Bosch were one of them.
Yeah,
it's just
and it's hard in non-league, and and I think probably Dave and might probably appreciate this a tiny bit more, but I think in terms of non-league, it's quite a merry-go-round of players. You do see a lot of players move between different clubs, and I think it's not uncommon for some players to have 2 or 3 clubs during the season. And that's where the consistency really falls into place. And I think, ourselves at Avenue and other teams that we'll probably go on to mention across non-league as well, you've got to have a bit of a core of players to build from, and the rest of it you can almost complement around. And I think that's where, Avenue have probably struggled. We had some good loan signings that came in, like some Marutza and Brooks, who were on fire down that left-hand side. Within 1 week, both of them have gone. So that's whole one side of your football team taken out, and that disrupts everything. That's what you get at non-league. You have loan players who are doing it, and then, 6 months later, Andre Brooks is playing in the FA Cup quarter-final against Spurs on TV. So that's just the way it goes. And listen, there's failings, there's mistakes to learn from. But yeah, recruitment is an absolute key necessity for us to be half decent next season.
Just on that, 2 of the sides that I report on for my site, Huddersfield Hub, is Golke United and Emley. 2 sides further down the pyramid, obviously from your boys. And the thing that's really been successful at both them sides is that they've had quite settled squads. And don't get me wrong, they've had players that have put the ball in the back of the net. Joe Jagger at Emley and Ashley Flynn at Golker or Kyle Price the last season. But, they have had stable squads. They have had people there that have been, in Golker's case, done it for quite a number of seasons now. And some of them have been there for when they were even an amateur club. So I do think that helps, particularly at non-league level. I mean, it helps in all life of football, at whatever level, but particularly at non-league level, if you're there and you've got, lads that are doing jobs and, they're all together and that sort of thing, and they have a good social dressing room as well, it can really help. And we saw that last season where Emley just missed out on promotion, finishing 3rd in the Northern East Counties League. And Golker finished 9th after a bit of a rocky start, but they propelled up to 9th. So, I totally agree with what you've just said there, Lewis, really, about dressing rooms and how difficult it can be at non-league level, because they have that 7-day period, don't they, where they can, you can approach players, and it's a bit tricky, isn't it,
Yeah, no, you're 100% right, mate. And I think there's a massive split as well within non-league. Like you said, 2 teams who've, performed above the batting average, really. I think Golker have been exceptional this season. Emley have got some of the most experienced players in and around this league. They've had Jamie Price, who is, almost missed a non-league himself. James Knowles, James Walshaw's been there. Paul Walker, when you've got players like that who've been there, done it, and know exactly what it takes to win. And it's no surprise that Emley have finished 3rd. And I think, the split is, teams like that where they do have a bit of a merry-go-round, but you get to the points of like Halifax and David and the guys there, well, these are full-time. So even that 7-day grace period almost kind of gets kicked out. We're almost, well, they are professional football clubs now, and there's that big split where if you're performing at a half-decent level, you're going to get approached by a big team who've got a little bit of extra money, can give you an option of going full-time. And so some players will decide, well, do I want to take risk and go full-time, and do I want to do that for 3-6 months and risk it for the contract, or do I stay part-time, probably keep my normal job, as well as earning on the side with my part-time football job and probably get paid better. And I think that's where the ambition and against your life balance and social balance, to your point, Steve, I think really comes into play. So, it's a really an interesting conundrum between the non-league at the moment. And I think, not just saying it because we're on the podcast, but I think the non-league situation in West Yorkshire is actually very strong. I think it is actually probably one of the best in the UK. And I think, we are lucky to have some of these clubs on the doorstep. It's making sure that not only do they survive, but they're thriving. And I think at the moment there's a handful of teams who are giving it a good go, which I know we'll talk later on about, which is encouraging for us all to watch, really.
But it's not just tricky for the player, it's tricky for the club as well. Like, you take Emley as an example. Joe Jagger scored 31 goals in that league. Got approached nearly every single week to sign for somebody else. Obviously stayed loyal at Emley. I just spoke to him earlier this week for an article. And, then against Barton goes as a double leg break. Yeah. And the point is he could have probably earned a lot more money by going elsewhere because he was scoring over goals. But, that's just in commas, no pun intended, but that is the breaks. That's the way it goes. I mean, 1 week he's potentially got an offer on the table, but wants to stay at Emley, and the next week he's in Hull Hospital and thinks his whole career's ended. So,
and it's having that extra support in it when you're a part-time player like that, compared to the big football clubs like your Leeds, your Huddersfield, etc., and to that point of Halifax and Bradford City, etc., where they're going to probably have a little bit of, maybe that private medical assurance for treatment and medical staff behind him to get him rehabilitated. Well, when you're part-time, you're not on your own, but you're not far off.
Look at the situation that happened with Jake last year at Back Ave. Yeah. Exactly. He had a really bad injury, didn't he?
And it's the nature of a beast, and I think it is with any football club. That's a risk you take. If you sign any players, you've always got in the back of your head what if that serious injury does happen. But I think from a football perspective, again, we'll probably talk about guys like Lewis Whittam again, prime example to the point of Joe Jagger. Lewis Whittam's on an absolute crest of the wave. He's been linked with clubs higher up in the division, in the higher divisions. He does his ACL where guys are knocking on the door of the playoffs, and I'm not saying that's the only reason, but I think it had a big factor where guys had just faded a little bit. But yet they're doing fundraising to get Lewis, which I know he's got his operation done, so he's already signed for next year. And that's just the way non-league rolls, and you've just got to accept it and go with it. And it's the same with Jake, like you mentioned, Jace. We haven't seen Jake for a year. Hopefully, we know he's back and he's kind of in a good place, but it's also a bit of a mental thing. How do you come back from an injury like that, so serious? And you've got a life to live, you've got a family to provide, you've got a job to do. And I think, there's a little bit of a difference between non-league and you lucky people up there in the football pyramid.
Yeah. Just turning our attention then to Halifax Town, Dave, it was Chris Millington's debut season as manager for the club, and they've ended up with a trophy. They've ended up with this fantastic Wembley win, but to me, it seemed like a really bit of a struggle did last season for Halifax. Would that be fair? I mean, what's your assessment of how it went?
Well, as you say, it's his debut season. He's won a piece of silverware, but for long periods of that season, up until arguably some supporters would say Millie Ali scoring a absolute last kick of the game equaliser against Altrincham in the FA Trophy semi-final. Our season were just petering out to just nothing, basically. I mean, we were slipping towards the bottom four. I personally didn't think we'd ever go down, especially after the turn of the new year. If you'd maybe have asked me in August, September, it'd have been a different story. But it totally, I don't want to say resurrected the season, but it gave it a massive spark. And from there, we beat Wrexham, beat York. We had this we've ended the season 8 unbeaten, and I think we won 6 and drew 2, or we may have even won 7, including the FA Trophy final. So, the disappointment's been since the high of Wembley. It seems like news out of the club. They took almost a 2-week sabbatical, and they've only just started sort of opening up again. We've heard about signings and releases, and I'm sure we'll get on to that. But a strong end. But we just seemed to just sort of bob along for 2/3 of that particular season.
Yeah, I mean, do you think it's safe to say that, I mean, the FA Trophy saved Millington's job then?
Possibly. I mean, it were an uninspiring performance up until that goal. I mean, we'd pushed, I think, for the last half an hour at 1-0 down with nothing to lose, really, and possibly deserved that equaliser, but did it save his job? Oh, maybe. Some people would say, oh, yeah, definitely it did, but it's difficult to say. I'll say yes, it probably did save his job, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you go to Wembley? Were you there on the day? Or
yeah, I was there, yeah. I went. I was never going to miss it. I was never going to miss it. I don't know when we're going to get there again, so yeah, I would never going to miss it. Again, like all trophy finals or not all playoff finals, but most trophy finals, it was sort of a scrappy game. It was won by a scrappy goal, but thankfully we got it. And it's a record. We played every game away from home in that run in the FA Trophy, the first team to ever win the FA Trophy, having played every tie away from home.
Yeah, I think particularly in the semi-finals where you thought they might struggle with this one, but they like say Millie Alley, just unbelievable. But it'd be interesting actually if we think of who gets goal of the season across the region. I'd probably pick for that one over Jamie Spencer. No offense there, Lewis. I think just the importance of that goal and what it did to Halifax's season is just incredible, really.
Our part of the team that recruited him at Stockport.
Yeah,
he's some player. Is he on loan at Town?
No, he's under contract for next season as well.
Good player.
So yeah, he's got an actual contract. Yeah,
it's Halifax's Robbins and Ferguson scenario, isn't it? He saved his job, so he'll probably go get promoted next year, and Millington.
Well, let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Well, looking at
why not? We've got rid of Wrexham and Notts County now. I think Oldham are going to make a real good go of it this year. Chesterfield will be there or thereabouts. Fylde are back, apparently throwing £1 million a year at it, despite being,
that sounds like Fylde.
Fylde come back every 5 years and try it and then fail and then go into administration, then come back 5 years later. Well, we'll spend another $1 million. They keep coming up with these owners that think that they can just be money bags.
Keep going back to the roulette wheel every time. Are you a bit concerned, Dave, about some of the exits with players at the moment? I mean, you've got Spence, you've got Gilmore Senior that have left the club. I mean, how concerned are you with that?
I'm not really too concerned with Kean Spence because, truth be told, we didn't really see a lot of him this year anyway. He was recovering from. It's never officially been said. Some people said he had a certain type of hip injury that I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but it's fairly common in athletes that twist in movements in sport. It's like I said, I can't just remember what it's called, and it can keep you out for months and months. It could potentially end your career. But everybody's had the say on it. Nobody's ever officially come out and said, this is why Kean Spence is injured. And then for a long time, it was like, he's a month away, he's a week away, he's a few weeks away, and then he was an unused sub, and then we didn't see him again. So we haven't really missed him that much this year. He was definitely a lot more important the season before. Jack Senior, who we've lost to Doncaster Rovers. By all accounts, sort of the words from the Evening Courier and Tom Scargill's articles were, it took a very, very good offer from Doncaster Rovers to take him to that club in South Yorkshire. Obviously, he's Halifax born. He captained the club at Wembley, and Doncaster have made a couple of quite decent signings, and I think Jack Senior is going to be one. Harvey Gilmore certainly improved as this season went on, but Pete Wilde last season seemed to employ him more in a wide role, whereas Millington's brought him more into the centre, and he seemed to blossom a bit more there. And I'd have ideally liked to have kept Gilmore another season, but he's gone to Rochdale. I believe his contract were over. The one I'm really concerned about at the minute is the fact we haven't officially extended Sam Johnson's contract. He was a Golden Glove winner jointly with East Leeds goalkeeper last season. So for all the how good was your season last season, we kept the most league clean sheets of 18. We only scored 49, however. So the problems weren't really the defence, it was more the attack. But personally, the one I want to see tied down that's currently up in the air is Sam Johnson.
Yeah.
What about Jesse Deborah as well? Because I know he's been linked in. Whenever I've seen him, David, he's been impressive. I think he could play at an higher level as well.
Yeah, his contract's up at the club. I mean, there was a sort of second part of an in-depth interview in today's Halifax Courier online where Chris Millington said we've put the absolute best offer we can put on the table. But by the sounds of it, he is going to leave for a Football League club. The problem is, over pre-season, I'm sure you'll all encounter it, everybody that can write a blog likes to write a blog. So he's been linked with Swindon, Carlisle. Yeah, I think Huddersfield may have made an actual bid last season, but we've been under contract.
Yeah, we offered money for him. It was like very low, crappy offer, don't get me wrong. And I think it was a bit insulting, but from my understanding, he wanted to come to town as well. From my understanding, he was like, yeah, get me on that train. So...
He's decent, but he'd struggle at championship level.
Yeah. I'm not. Listen, I don't think he will get in our team, but it was interesting that obviously Halifax turned down that offer, and now he's leaving on a free. So
it's certainly one of those, isn't it? If you were to get him in a League Two or a mid-table League One side for a couple of years, that experience, that development, then that move to Huddersfield or a Championship club could be there, but. He's certainly.
Good job the Bradford City guy's not on, so don't get any ideas. Anyway, a little bit later, we won't tell him.
Yeah, he's been linked with pretty much every club at League One and League Two level by all these Football Insider people that write vlogs just about just stuff that they can make up, basically.
If Lincoln announced that they're signing tomorrow, I'd be fairly happy with that. I'd be like, yeah, you know what, give him a go. He'd be all right at Lincoln.
Yeah, I think he's going to leave. I have no doubts he's going to leave. Millington said we've offered him the best offer we could do, but the way it was written and the general impression I got is that he won't be with us in maybe even by this time next week.
Before we move away from the outs, David, I just want to ask a little bit more about Harvey Gilmore, because whilst being a Lincoln fan, I work for Rochdale, obviously, where he's gone. What's he like as a player? Where's his best position? And how was his season? Because from what I've seen online from other people, that apparently terrible first half of the season, decent second half of the season.
Yeah, he certainly grew into the season. Once he moved into a more central position, it may have even been slightly enforced because we lost Luke Summerfield to. He had a long-term illness. He weren't actually injured. And what he had kept him out for a good couple of months. And when he came back, he said, specialists and doctors said it's so rare to see this particular condition in people that keep such a great fitness level. But he's not like a tough tackling midfielder. It's difficult to describe. He's not a box-to-box midfielder per se, but he's good in possession. He'll play sort of like his passes are pretty accurate. There was one. He's more of sort of like he'll just put a ball to the side. He sort of keeps possession basically, just keeps the team ticking over. But then again, I was at York away where he pinged a ball over the top for Manny D to head over the top of a goalkeeper that was just a superb through ball over the top. It was just like a cross from sort of like 45 yards out on the right wing. The way he curled it in and. Still needed a good finish, but it was straight on the head of Manny D, another player who's out of contract.
We call that type of player an Oliver Norwood player. They just keep picking things over. Has Nathan Clark been released as well? Is he just too old now, or what's
Nathan Clark hasn't played for Halifax Town since the end of 2021. He's a football agent now, but Tom Clark's still there.
Oh, is Tom Clark there? Still,
yeah, Tom Clark. We've had Tom Clark all season, but he's only managed, I think, about 12 games. Right. I think he's had a recurring knee injury. Obviously, he's coming up towards 34, 35 now. And it's been disclosed that there's been some personal circumstances, obviously, in his personal life that have also affected him this season. But he is under contract, so... Right. Yeah, he has a year left on his contract and he'll be 35. We extended the contract of midfielder Luke Summerfield, who I touched on a couple of minutes ago as well, which we're happy with. He'll be 35 as well.
Yeah, are you happy with Adam Senior though, signing permanently after the loan?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know any supporter that isn't. Yeah, he played 20 games on loan from Bolton. And we thought we wouldn't get him. We thought he's going to go to a league club, or even maybe a League One club. So we're absolutely chuffed that we've got him. But then on the flip, people are saying we've got Adam Senior because we know that Jesse Deborah is going to leave, very, very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Just throwing it out there, Chris Millington, Manager of the Year for West Yorkshire. What do we think?
What?
Could we argue against that? A Wembley win, got a silverware. First year in the job. Big table, steady.
Give it to Jesse Marsh.
Have you drank something funny? You.
Who else are you giving it to? You can't do Warnock. He won't there.
Why not?
Mark Hughes.
He won 7 games. Hang on. He won 7 out of 15 games, drawing the other. He only lost 3 games.
Yeah, but Wembley silverware. Come on, Steve. How often does that happen?
I'm sorry, saving a championship club that was nigh on impossible compared. Like, no offense to Halifax, brilliant. Like, honestly,
I'll throw one out there, and this is probably people will look at me going, "Who?" and like, "What do they do?"
I think I know where you're going with this already, Lewis. But go on.
Yeah, I think James Bicknell and Lee Ashworth at Camping, they've won the treble, they've won the league by 12 points, and the goal difference is about 102 compared to second place who were 51. So
I think they deserve it, to be honest.
Yeah, they're smashed down there.
But in terms of Huddersfield's recruitment this pre-season, they've made their biggest signing today, Neil Warnock.
Yeah,
I said it to my friend. I think that's the biggest piece of business the Terriers will do this summer for certain.
If I'm honest, I give it Sam Allardyce for best manager at season. But that's just my opinion.
Right, I'm kicking him off. Kicking him off.
Get rid of him.
Go on, Jay.
What do you mean? He only played 6 defenders in a game we needed to win.
No, that's that. But that would be part of his tactical genius. Come on, lads. You know what I mean?
He's up there with Pep.
Better than Pep. I mean, Pep's won Champions League. Sam got relegated Leeds. It's to me, they're just as good things to happen. To be honest,
I might put my bitter and jealous hat on here, but I might throw Mark Hughes into there. But we'll keep that.
Oh my God, please.
Ooh. I think he's disappointed. Before we get the City lad on, I think Mark Hughes underperformed. What do you think?
Steve's got a thing about Mark Hughes, hasn't he?
I was saying to Steve, partly to wind him up, but probably a grain of truth in it as well. I was like, why you Huddersfield gone for Mark Hughes?
You were being serious, Steve, when it all happened. You were being serious. I
was just like, why is Mark Hughes gone to Bradford City? Why is he at Bradford City? And then I thought he'd be perfect for Huddersfield Town.
Bradford enticed him with a season ticket that was worth about 10 quid.
Exactly.
Trying to get 18,000 fans in, isn't
it? Back up the pyramid then. Jason, Leeds United, no director of football sorted out yet, no manager, but a change of ownership that looks to have, it's almost been complete. They've got a few checks that they've got to go through. Obviously, we've messaged privately. I think we both feel a bit more optimistic about the situation, but where's your head at it?
Sorry. Have we got long enough for this conversation?
Don't worry, we'll be brief. I'm neutral. I'm neutral on this now.
Leeds here. I mean, I've got to go to bed in 3 hours.
Anyway, it's not. It's the 69ers, isn't it? Not the 49ers.
God, I'm so glad we're in the same division as you.
I think it's like the first of the building blocks in it that's had to go into place. There's a huge reset that needs to happen at Leeds. Like I've heard today that, and I heard this from another source beforehand, that there were no patterns of play getting, put in place at training. Like the behind the scenes is just a mess. And the idea that the club had towards management this year was just a sham. Recruitment was a sham. So for us, I think it's just nice to now have that first block in place. Rads has gone, Orta's gone, and we can hopefully start building back towards, some sort of success this year. I think, for me, looking into this season, I honestly would be happy with the top 6. I would. That's on the face. I know some fans have been like, no,
I'm sorry, I'm just looking at Steve.
What's
He's just got the biggest grin on his face through this entire section. He's absolutely loving it.
Top 6.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic expectation, Steve. Because you've got to take into.
You're not going to manage it yet.
Hang on.
No. But
I'm going to mediate slightly here because, to be fair, I kind of get where Jason's going in because ultimately, Leeds are a massive club and they will get a good manager in. They have the parachute payments to invest.
Didn't they?
They will have a lot of money to come in from player sales. If they get the right manager and the right recruitment, absolutely they could be top 6. In fact, to be honest, Steve, I love this, Steve. They could even be top 2.
Right,
Steve, I said to Brownie the other week, right, and he'll back me up when I say this, right? When this, was first being talked about and the hope and expectations for next season, and it looked as if Rads was going to probably stay on, I said to Brownie, we will do well to be in the top half, let alone.
Yeah, I know that you said that. I watched it.
And that's the truth. Like, I believe that. Like, I believed if Rads had stayed, I think we'd have been closer to the bottom.
Yeah.
To the relegation zone than actually getting promoted. But I think the 49ers, they're a venture capitalist company, and they are buying Leeds United based around making money. Now, they don't make the money that they want to make in the Championship. They just don't. So it is absolutely essential that they go back up this season. So I know the gap between the Premier League and the Championship has grown bigger since we were even here 3 years ago. So I just don't see that there's a world in which we don't compete, which is why I think saying, top six is definitely achievable. And I think it'd be a fair expectation for the season.
Can I put some realism? By the way, I find it absolutely hilarious. You said top six and the Halifax guy switched off. So that was quite timing apt, actually. But can I just add a bit of I accept what you're saying, Jace, by the way, and I've listened to every podcast you've done with Steve, and you're a knowledgeable chap, I will say that, right? But
there's a book called
everything before the book's bullshit, Steve. You know that, don't you?
But the big but is, right, I've sat here in your, not on this podcast, but because it didn't exist when we came down from, well, it did, but show making was on it. But I've sat in your position now,
show making,
where we've got you've got a fragmented squad, players that don't want to be there. You've got crap American players that definitely don't want to be there. You've got some players like Ayling, Cooper, that will put the shift in again for next season, but they're not good enough. And I thought it was really brave of you to say the other day or the other week that you thought they were, before Bielsa, they were average Championship players, and they're going to go back to being average Championship players, which I totally agree with. I think that's a fair comment. Yeah. So what I would say is you are in the position I was in, where you're coming down with, that you've got some good players, but they don't want to be there. You've got lads that might be able to make it, but you're not sure. And you're paying big wages for some players that, don't really want to be playing in the Championship. They want to play in the Premier League or abroad. So
those players will get moves, though.
It's purely down to the recruitment.
But you say that. But we had Mbemza, Pritchard, Diakar, all these lads that came over for big money, and didn't really give two hoots. They were difficult to shift. I don't think you realise how hard they were to shift these.
You know what, though, Steve, right? The one good thing, though, that Radrizzani has done is he's created this kind of effect throughout the whole squad where they're getting 60% wage decreases, right? Yeah. So these players are not going to stay around on 40% of the wage that they were on last season. They're just not. True. So they're going to either re-sign a new contract on middle terms in between what they're on now and what they were on, or they're going to move out on loan. This is why we're hearing so many rumored transfers for Leeds going out on loan, because what's going to happen is we'll probably end up paying a chunk of the wage, maybe 50% of what the new contract is, and the new team, i.e. Betis or whoever, will make it up to what it was before we got relegated. That's what's going to happen. This is why it's in the... So I don't see... I agree with Chris. I don't see it being a situation where we're stuck with these players. I hear you, and I absolutely think you're right. That the next month is massive. But director of football, manager, and getting the recruitment right, I don't see the team being very recognisable in comparison to what it was last season. I think there'll be 2 or 3.
Go on. Sorry, Lewis. Yeah, go for it.
No, I was going to say, I think you've hit the nail on the head with that just little last bit about manager. I think, there's obviously rumours of transfers coming in, transfers coming out. I don't know how that's even possible when you've not got a director of football and a manager in place. It baffles me, and I still think it's hilarious that still happens. But I think for me, it's like we said earlier, one of the best signings Huddersfield are probably going to do is getting Warnock in today. That's your manager. That's your ground, don't you, from the beginning. And I think for you guys at Leeds, it's absolutely just imperative you get the right people in, because if the 49ers, obviously with the situation, the money's going to be there, I don't think that's going to be the issue. The issue is getting the right people in place and making sure that those people are getting the people that they want, because you can't afford to start that season slowly in the Championship, can you? At all.
Now
go on, Steve.
No, I was just going to say that I think Lewis makes a good point there, and Jess, you have said that before, where the difference between when we came down and when you've come down is you've got money and we definitely didn't, because we had an ownership situation that was, well, worse than probably Bradford Park Avenue. So in terms of the difference in ownership, it's different. I just know 2-3 years ago, Leeds fans, when you went up, you were all, we love the Premier League, we'll get into Europe, and then and when we went up, we were saying, oh, how great it was, the Premier League. But then we've come down, and you realise how the Premier League isn't that golden goose. And I think a lot of Leeds fans have finally realised that, and that's been more of a shock to you than what it was to us. I'm not saying you're going to do badly. I don't think you should have high expectations for definitely a top 6 finish.
There's
so hard.
There's generations in this, though, isn't there? Because now there is a whole generation of Leeds fans that until now had never seen Leeds in the Premier League, to be fair.
Yeah.
So it's going to be kind of the expectations for them versus those that, remember the European days and that sort of thing.
There was 6 generations of town fans that had never seen us in top league, so there was quite a difference there, to be fair.
The scope for potential, though, Steve, is very different. Like, I don't want to be derogatory towards any club, like Luton as an example. No,
there's a book coming here as well.
I'm being serious. Like, Luton have gone into the Premier League this season. They will never be able to equate to what a club like Aston Villa and Leeds United, who have both been in the Championship recently, would be able to equate to, because it's just not possible. It's physically impossible. And I consider Huddersfield in the same ballpark as that. Success for Huddersfield would be finishing 17th in the Premier League every season. Norwich have kind of said something similar, where they want to finish in the top 26 out of the 2 divisions, the Premier League and then the 6 from the Championship. I just think that the expectations are always going to be different between them clubs. It don't matter. Even when we were in League One, we spoke about being back in the Premier League. It was never just Championship and that's the ceiling. But I hear you. Like, this season is going to be extremely difficult. I think a lot of fans are very, very delusional when they're thinking it's just going to be a walkover. It's going to be us and Leicester. I've seen that. Like, nah. Like, I don't agree with that at all. I don't agree with it at all. I just think we've got a good youth pool that we can pick from. I think we've got the 49ers are not coming in. This is what I'm holding most of my hope on anyway. The 49ers are not coming in to it and have not invested in a club that are going to be finishing 10th in the division. That's just not what they are seeing. They are going to put the infrastructure in place and throw the money at it that it needs to have promotion campaigns after promotion campaigns. That doesn't mean that we will finish top 6. I get it.
Go on, I'm going to throw it back to you guys and Jason and Brownie, because you normally ask the question, Steve, so you aren't going to get away with this one. Who do you guys want to see come in as your director of football and your manager to make sure that you're going to get next season?
I was
that's
going to ask that myself. Go on.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting one, because actually we're heavily linked with Stuart Webber, who Steve will know.
No, you are getting one.
I messaged you, didn't I, Steve, last week? I said, what's this bloke like? Now, he was quite popular at Huddersfield Town, wasn't he? Or he did a decent job.
He was to begin with, but he didn't. Yeah. He wasn't in the end.
Was he around with Jan Siever that sort of time?
No, it was Wagner, wasn't it?
Yeah. So basically, he brought David Wagner to the club because he went on a European scouting tour and found Wagner at Dortmund. He had a meeting with Wagner, who came in jeans and a t-shirt, and explained his footballing philosophy by putting a pack of raisins on the table and a piece of paper, and that somehow convinced Webber. Genius move. But yeah, it was difficult in the end because I think Webber's expectations of him being at Liverpool and Wolves, big clubs that have big ambitions under quite heavy ownerships, And Town was a bit different. So it kind of goes to Jason's point where we, at that point, weren't expecting to get promoted to the Premier League. We just wanted to be a stable Championship club. And I think Webber has always had views of probably above his station where he thinks that he should be a club that, should be battling at the top of the league and getting promoted with big wages, with big players. And so he'll suit you down to the ground. I think
he's a Leeds fan, isn't he?
Somebody said he's a Leeds fan. So I wouldn't be shocked if he did come in. He's very good at his job. He's a very good operator. He knows how to get people in that do the job properly. And so he probably will be a very good move for you guys. I don't think Town fans have got much love for him because just of how it all sort of ended. But everybody does say that and praise him for getting Wagner in. And although, David Wagner will always be the hero to Town fans, actually, it's Stuart Webber that we do need to thank because he found him. So for Leeds, it's a very good move, I think.
Things like this are always good when they're good, and then when they're not, they were never the right answer. Like, Stuart Webber brought in players like Buendia, Vrancic, Pukki, Stiepermann. Like that Norwich team was sensational. And I mean, for me, I wanted Brendan Rodgers, but I understood the how ambitious that was, and it's probably not realistic because 3 months in, if he doesn't take the Celtic job, 3 months in, he gets another Premier League job. And reputationally, he would put so much risk on the line. Taking the Leeds job, it goes wrong, he's done. He's screwed. Yeah, so I get it.
At the same time, I find it mad that he's going back to Celtic.
I agree.
Where he's won everything there is to win.
And they hate him.
And they hate him. Well, half the fan base hate him. And the other fact is that how much further are they actually going to get in Europe? I mean, he might pull off the European Conference crappy JPT European Trophy thing, but he's not going to get much further, is he? So I would personally, if I'd have been Rod, I'd have taken the Leeds job. I'd have said, right, Big Sam said he were better than Pep. Well, bloody hell, if I get Leeds promoted, I must be the best manager on planet, mate.
The thing is, you were just saying we're going to finish bottom half.
That's it.
Brendan Rodgers should have picked us. Make your mind up.
No. On Jason's point, I think yes, it's a massive risk for Rodgers if he came to Leeds. I totally agree with that. But if you're a manager that you back yourself and you've got any salt about you, then you go for the risk, don't you? You don't go back to Celtic where it's bloody hell. We could manage it and win the league there. It's not difficult, is it?
I think the director of football chat is a really, really interesting one because, Victor Orta obviously is now despised by Leeds fans. But, if Victor Orta had just shut up and just been... No, but seriously, if it had just been the figure that he should have been as a professional director in our football club, if he'd have just done that job, we'd have remembered Rafinha instead. We'd have remembered Marcelo Bielsa instead. We'd have remembered Ben White instead. When we all looked at the Ben White signing and were like... who's this kid? He's been on loan in League One. Like, that was Victor Orta and his recruitment team. So, the problem with fans is we're so fickle. Like, things just drop and we change direction in the way that we feel about it. But that's a fact when it comes to Victor Orta. He absolutely made some howlers. But if he'd have been a little bit more professional away from, and just stayed away from the camera, I don't think we'd have remembered him in quite the same way. But yeah, I'm for Webber and Farke, mate. I mean, any Leeds fan that's like, oh no, turning the nose up at Daniel Farke is wild for me. We're a Championship club again now. We need to, have some awareness of where we're at.
If you make those appointments, you are top six.
I would think so.
No. I don't think you're laughing at that, but I, genuinely, because under that stewardship, you will get some proper players in.
I think so.
They know the level, they know the Championship. I mean, look at Pukki at Norwich. I mean, what a find that was for Norwich City. I mean, and he came from absolutely nowhere. I bet if anybody was back in 2014 or whatever, and you asked him who's Tico Pukki, nobody would have known him.
No, I knew all about him.
Yeah,
I mean, you're just a massive brain, Steve. So you know
I'm not going to lie. I'm sounding like Football Manager 2012, and
exactly.
Genuinely did, by the way.
I've heard today, by the way, quite a decent source for this one. I've not been able to find any management information out while I've been at Ellen Road today, but I do know that we've contacted Kiefer Moore. We've contacted Bournemouth with regards to Kiefer Moore.
That would be a great move.
Yeah, it would be a good sign. But when we're talking about the fact that how are things happening, I have no idea. I mean, I spoke to Brownie about it. I know a scout that works for Leeds, and I know that things are still going on with the head of the kind of academy recruitment, then feeding into Angus Kinnear. Whether any signings will physically go through until the manager and the new director of football comes in, I don't think so. But I know that we have contacted Bournemouth with regards to Kiefer Moore today. So.
Good stuff. Well, anyways, let's put to bed all this championship talking away, because I'm delighted to say joining us now is Gareth Walker from the Width of the Post, here to chat all things Bradford City. Gareth, thanks for joining us, mate.
You're welcome. How are you?
Good, thank you. Reflecting on Bradford City season, then it obviously ended in playoff disappointment. A few weeks on, how do you reflect on that game and the season at whole?
Season as a whole, there's been progress, but I think that the minimum requirement was playoffs. So I think Hughes has achieved that. And as such, he'll get next season, or he'll get at least the start of next season, probably the whole of it, depending on how we're doing. But ideally, we'd have obviously liked a bit better. We wanted to go up to the playoffs in themselves. I mean, I listened to what Jason spoke to you about when he did his interview with you, and can't help but agree with him. We're just disappointing over the two legs. People have been criticising Hughes for negativity throughout the season, and I hadn't really bought into it. But in the playoffs, particularly that sub with Banks, taking him off after he just set up the goal at Carlisle, and it just kind of like, I think to a lot of people, that showed what's been a problem all season. He brought a centre-half on for him when we needed to score another goal. And then we conceded with three centre-halves on from a ball into the box over the top of the three centre-halves. So it's not really...
Did you buy what Hughes said about that in terms of, it was like a fitness thing and they were worried about him getting injured, or do you think he should have just stuck it out with him?
He played a couple of nights later for Palace under-21s. So he can't have been that time. And then as well, like if that was the case, bring another winger on. We had that was the only time over the two legs where we'd had the ascendancy. We'd just scored. Carlisle had been dominant throughout the game up till that point, and then we scored. And you could see they sank to the knees. They physically, you could see that was our chance to go and get another goal, and he did that. And it was just a little bit like, well, I mean, I like Hughes. I think he's been great for the club. He's got everyone sort of united again. I've not bought into some of the criticism throughout the season, but at that point, it was just like, we're in the way, and we're just like, what is he doing? Like, why has he done that? Why has he done that? Yeah. And I know what you said afterwards, but...
I thought you were fortunate to get out of Valley Parade with a win, to be honest.
Yeah, they were the better side, especially second half.
Side.
Yeah, second half they were. I thought we started well, but after we'd scored, we didn't do a lot. And the second half they had numerous chances to score. Maybe that was because we sat back. A few people said we should have gone for a second goal and didn't, but who knows? Hughes has been a bit like that all season, a little bit cautious. I'd like to see him go for it a bit more next season. We had the players to do it this year. I don't know why he didn't.
Yeah. Well, how do you think of what's happened so far? I mean, obviously Johnny Williams is not joining. That came through today. That looked like a done deal. I think he was put up in a hotel in Leeds a couple of nights ago or something, but it's not fallen through. What needs to happen in terms of the squad building over the summer?
I think Williams would have been a decent signing. He's versatile, isn't he? Reading what Swindon and fans have said about him, he could play off the left, he can play as a 10, he can play as an 8. And Sparks had spoken, Ryan Sparks had said that we wanted versatility from our signings this season, this pre-season. So I think he'd have been a good signing. It's always a bit worrying, isn't it, when it breaks in the press a couple of days before, and they don't normally run things in the local press. But obviously, Simon Parker probably felt he had to do it because the Sun had already broken the story, so you can't blame him. But I just get the impression his agents played a blinder, used it to get him an equal offer closer to home. Said they've maxed down money and he lives down there, so
yeah. A bit of money as well, haven't they? Yeah, absolutely.
I think outside looking in, and guys, you'll know far better than me. And apologies because obviously I'm Park Avenue and non-league, so I do have a bit of a laugh sometimes. So I do apologise, but I think seriously, I mean, I've known Ryan for a long time, personally outside of City, and I think the infrastructure is built there is actually very strong. I think he's got the club back to probably what it should be. I think there's been quite grandiose expectations before of Bradford City being ex-Premier League. I think to the point that you were making, Jason, about Huddersfield and other teams, where City, I think sometimes, I could be wrong, maybe think they're bigger than what they actually are, historically in terms of divisions of where they've been. But I think now with that infrastructure that Ryan and the team have set up, I think you seem to be going in the right direction. I think, again, looking at this season, you were more than capable of going up. And again, I might be harsh. I think it's a failure not to go up. But when you look at some of the results that you had at home, that home form, I think it's crippled you for not going up. And I'm looking at Chris, who's been at Rochdale, losing 1-0 at home to Rochdale. And it's those kind of games where if you're going to get promoted, you've just got to win. And, that I think this season was tough. And I think next season is going to be even tougher to get out of League Two.
Just share my thoughts on that. Like, we talk about the Leeds shirt weighing heavy on the type of player that we can get in the Championship. I think the same applies for Bradford in League Two. I think you clearly have the talent that then goes out on the pitch, but actually dealing with that intensity and the expectation, I think is really, really tricky. I think if you put them same players in another team where the expectation would be much lower, I think you'd see a team that ended up probably winning the league. Like a Northampton or whoever else were up there this season. Like, that's how I say it. I think we had that for years in the Championship. We only didn't have it under Bielsa. So,
I mean, I know we spoke about recruitment, didn't we, about various other teams. And Gaz, you probably, again, feel free to go on it because it's your expert opinion on it. But, you think you've had like 40 players across the season. And that's just madness, isn't it? I think I know Stephen Gent's come in, he's done a decent job recruitment-wise. I think, from the outside looking in again, beginning of pre-season, you thought you could understand where that recruitment was going. But then across the season, to use 40 players, 45 players, whatever it was, it looks like on a squad list. I can't see the consistency to make sure that you've got a consistent run of form to get yourself promoted. I don't know what your thinking on that is.
The only other thing I would say is that I spoke to a lot of City fans before that second leg against Carlisle, and there seemed to be a real apathy. Like, you couldn't go up there and get a result. Like, it was weird. Like, obviously they're a bit of a bogey team for City, but I think that there was a lot of there wasn't like that excitement that you would feel in a playoffs. I don't know whether that come across or whether I've got that wrong. It's just the City fans that I sort of talked to, really, and then afterwards they kind of like knew it was going to happen.
I think there was a bit of apprehension going up to Carlisle. Obviously, we played them twice in the league. I think we'd only probably been better in one half of those games, been the better side. I think in the other three halves of those games, they'd been the better side. And then obviously, like Leeds fans said there, in the playoffs, they were the better side in the second half, in the first leg at Valley Parade. So we were a bit worried going up there. I think we haven't won there since like 1985 or something silly. So it's a bit of a bogey ground as well. As for the squad depth, I think that was a big thing. We had this really bloated squad, and he wasn't using a lot of the players. So he obviously didn't trust some of those players. He was relying on the same ones all the time, towards the end of the season especially. And when I think Harry Chapman got injured at Crewe away, we had two options to play on the left-hand side, and neither of them were good enough. You could see neither of them were good enough. So we had these three players to play off the left, but only one of them was good enough to play. So like the other two were a bit of a letdown, really. I think as for the shirt weighing heavy on us, City have like made a big thing of like trying to get. I think since Phil Parkinson did it, he made a big thing of saying like we need the right characters to come here to be able to handle the crowd and the expectation, like you said. And he did it, and it worked. And the club have kind of like tried to get back to that, I think, under Ryan, and it has paid dividends to an extent. But then it makes you wonder like how did Johnny Williams slip through the net like that? Like he's obviously like. His character's got to be called into question if he's shaking hands on a deal. And then I know he's gone to where he's local and stuff, but it don't reflect very well on him either, does it?
Mm. One of the contenders for player of the season across our region has to be Andy Cook. I mean, what an incredible season, Gaz. I mean, what can you say about him? I mean, unbelievable. Absolutely brilliant. I think a lot of people last summer thought he might be on his way out when we signed Verdane Oliver. And he'd obviously done really well at Gillingham, but Cook he was unbelievable. I mean, he scored goals at other clubs, hasn't he? I think he had a really good record in the conference when he was at Tranmere.
Yes. Yeah.
And then his record in League Two was pretty good, but nobody saw that coming, I don't think. 31 goals. I just staggered he didn't get Player of the Year, really. He was unbelievable, scoring with both feet, scoring with his head. He was assisting goals. It would just look like a new lease of life because he admitted himself at the end of the end of the season before that he hadn't done himself justice. He'd not kept himself fit, and he came back and he had a real point to prove, and he really did it. And I'm just so glad that we've managed to sign him to another contract because there's got to have been loads of clubs looking at him.
Yeah, I was thinking at one point Wrexham coming up and just,
Yeah,
bullying City a bit and putting in an offer. We were saying it, weren't we? I think
this,
to
we?
Jason
Yeah.
or Simon, what we were saying. I could see that happening. How do you think the division? Yeah, how do you think the division's shaping up then in terms of what it's going to look like next year? League Two, you've got Wrexham, you've got Notts County there. It's going to be really competitive and it's going to be quite tricky.
I think it's going to be a lot tougher than last season was. I think you can look at like half the division and they're going to be looking at least thinking they're going to be able to get top 7. You can literally half of the division will have promotion aspirations this season. I think like obviously Wrexham, Notts County, big budget, Stockport, big budget,
Gillingham, big budget.
Gillingham, yeah, they've done it to us today, haven't they?
Salford,
Forest Green, MK Dons, Swindon, they'll all have aspirations to go up. So it's going to be a tough one to improve on what we did last year. I just hope we can get the right players in to do that, and so like I said, go a step further this year.
What do you think the pressure is going to be like on Hughes then? I mean, it's probably going to be a tougher division next year, but I kind of think it needs to be promotion, doesn't it, really, next season?
Yeah, it does. Like I say, I think the minimum target for the season just gone with top 7, and he's done that, but people are disappointed that we didn't go up. They're probably seeing it as a missed opportunity, which I think is fair in some respects.
Yeah.
We had that top 3 in touching distance a few times, and then we just sort of fall short of the last hurdle, like going
7 points short of Northampton as well. Come the end.
Yeah, and we won at Northampton like 2 weeks before the end of the season.
Yeah, I remember.
But I thought, right, we've got a Crew on Wednesday night, and we win there, and we got beat at Crew. So,
well, this is the thing. That Crew game at that time as well was just, if anything could sum up Bradford City just in League Two, that was it. Losing all the key moments this season, losing at home to Rochdale and a couple of other sides that are down there, to be fair. And then, Crew away when you think, right, they're kind of bang average form, go away, grind out a result. Doesn't matter how you play, just get a result and contrive to lose it.
Absolutely. You're spot on about the home form as well. Like early in the season, especially, we were losing and drawing games at home that we should have been winning. And then the away form was keeping us up there. And then you thought, like you say, go to Crew. We went 2-0 down at Crew and got it back to 2-2. And then they scored in like a 100th minute penalty. It's just so Bradford City. It's just so Bradford City.
Yeah, I mean, am I right in thinking that all that added time as well was because there was certain Bradford fans in the away end that had launched pyrotechnics onto the pitch and it took time getting them off?
Apparently so, yeah.
Hence the amount of added time, which then goes and costs you the bloody game.
Apparently so, yeah. They threw some smoke bombs or whatever onto the pitch when the second goal went in, and there was like a 10-minute delay. And then obviously they've scored in the 10th minute of added time, a pen.
And I think this is where the home form, which you mentioned earlier, I think that's where it massively to play. I'm just looking at it now. Top 4 teams home form last season: Stevenage promoted, Orient promoted, Stockport promoted, Northampton promoted. I mean, you look down and a great respect, City in 10th. Yeah. And that's what's cost you this season, isn't it? And you look away from you're 5th. So if you get a couple more wins, few more wins out at home, you're in League One, aren't you, next season? And that's where I think, like Ryan and Mark, have got to look at that and make sure that you kind of, you're taking one step forward with your away form, but your own form is just vital. And I think especially when you do get the amount of fans you do, cheap season tickets, joke and all that kind of stuff. But you've got to harness that. You've got to embrace it. You can't be scared of it. You can't be fearful of it. That you should be using that to your advantage, if anything, because there's not many teams who have that, backing behind you every game. And I think next season, that's got to be the absolute focus, where you've just got to get that home form right.
Yeah, it felt especially, like I say, early on in the season. Every time we're coming back from Valley Parade, we're frustrated. Like the team, obviously, like you expect teams to come and sit in a low block and like defend and waste time because it was the biggest game of the season. But we didn't find a way of dealing with that early on. I think we did the more the season went on, but especially early on, we dropped a lot of points to those kind of situations. And we lost Tyreek Wright from the left hand side around in January, and he was a big threat in sort of going around the outside and breaking these teams down. And that was a big blow to lose him, but you're spot on. The home form has to be better. I mean, towards the end of the season, the atmosphere was fantastic, home and away. The crowd were really getting behind him, and I think it was creating that intimidating atmosphere. But we need to get those results at home. You're spot on.
You've got one of the best keepers in that league with Ali Lewis as well, and you've got to make sure you keep him, don't you, I think?
Yeah, fortunately, he's under contract. I think he's got another year and I think we might have an option on it for a year after that as well. I think I might be wrong there. But yeah, him and Cook were our two standouts this season. Without them, I'm worried about where we'd be at some points. But yeah, he didn't have his greatest game in the playoffs. I think at Carlisle away, he probably had his worst game he's had for us. But he made so many good saves and saved us so many points throughout the season. Big plus for us this season. And like you said, we've got to try and hold on to him if we can.
I know that we know how Bradford Park Avenue fans feel about Bradford City generally. What's it like the other way? Do you guys kind of keep an eye out for Avenue, or
they're not even bothered, Steve? We've got bigger fish to fry. Let's be honest. We've just got a bitter and jealous hat on here. That's all.
They say that, don't they? It's like steps up. Like everyone's looking one up all the time. Like who they don't like. Like when I started going early 90s. So like it was Huddersfield. We played Huddersfield all the time. That were our rivalry. Obviously, we then went up to Prem and then came back down, and they've like passed us and gone up there as well. So that's where our rivalry is for me. But I suppose it depends on what age you are.
I think there's a generation thing. I think especially with Avenue and City. I think more recently. I'll be honest. Nobody cares because there's absolutely zero. There's just no competition at all. I think the dream would be for the City of Bradford would be amazing if somehow Avenue got to the first round and met City, and that was kind of a bit of a Bradford derby. That'd be great, but that's just never going to happen at the moment. I think generationally, in terms of where the old Park Avenue and where City were, that's where the rivalry. And I'll go as far as I know people hate each other, especially Park Avenue to City. Some people I know in absolute fact, we've played West Rounding County Cup final, the big trophy at Valley Parade, and people won't set foot in Valley Parade. They actually won't because they don't like them that much. So I think
when he says some people, he means himself, by the way.
that is a massive thing, though. Definitely a generational thing. So, like you were saying, guys, obviously, you don't like us. You've got a bit of a thing for Huddersfield, and I suppose in my sense, I've got a bit of a thing for not Jace but Leeds. Leeds United, because obviously we haven't. In my time supporting town, we haven't played Bradford a lot. We've beat you in a couple of League Cup games, and that's about it, really. But we played Leeds a lot more. But I know a lot of town fans that, like you say, in that 90s period where, it's Bradford is the bigger, the bigger rivalry. And I know Jace will probably come on and say that he don't care about anybody.
That's not true.
Jace, because Leeds are so big, he couldn't really. We're all,
for me, like
compared to Leeds, aren't we?
Genuinely, my biggest hatred is Sheffield United. Like again, this is a generational thing, but I absolutely despise Sheffield United. Like they beat us, in 2002, 2003 in Cup, which then set the downward trajectory. Then they always beat us in Championship, past us. So yeah, for me, Sheffield United are my.
And now they've taken your Premier League place.
It makes it even worse.
Don't cry, Jess.
Paul Heckingbottom in charge as well.
I know.
I think it's a Warnock thing, Jace just has that thing about Warnock, doesn't he? It's just everything to do with it. He hates Cornwall and...
What's the Cornish pasty in my house, mate?
Town are going on a Cornwall pre-season tour. I absolutely love it. He basically... Warnock's decided that all our lads are going on a tour of Cornwall and visiting some of the great sites.
Is that just Truro City then in a pre-season?
No, it's let me get it up. I'll get the teams up. But we're playing there. We're going on this Cornish tour, and then 2 weeks later we're playing Haverveen, the Dutch side at home. So it's like
Heerenveen,
yeah. All right, Chris. Sorry. Bloody, I didn't know that you were Dutch. But yeah, let me just find. Here we go. We've got Bodmin Town. Never heard of them. AFC Tavistock. Now I think that they played Leighton Orient in that famous documentary with what's his name, John Sitton, and they lost in the FA Cup. And then I can't.
You're bringing his dinner.
He's bringing his dinner. Liskeed Athletic. So yeah, there we go.
Who was the striker that played at City and Huddersfield? Naki Wells.
Yeah, Naki Wells. Yeah.
Now, he was at City first, wasn't he? He was at
we bought him for 1 million. We bought him for $1 million.
He was their main man when they got to cup final and got promoted. Naki Wells.
Yeah,
good player.
That's it. Is he not? Was that a betrayal in Gaz when he went over to Huddersfield? Then was it kind of persona non grata when he left?
I think for people sort of my generation, I think your generational thing's spot on. Like my dad started going in the 70s, so his dad, if he'd have been going, it'd have been Park Avenue. My dad started going after Park Avenue, dropped out of the league, and then I started going in the 90s, and it was Huddersfield. So yeah, for my generation, selling to Huddersfield was a big thing. He's at Bristol City now, isn't he? I think.
He's still kicking about, isn't he?
Yeah. We did think at one point in the season, if Huddersfield Town had got relegated, Bradford City promoted, we thought, there might be a little bit of a League One reunion going on, but it wasn't to be. See what happens next season. That'd have been fun, though. What the prospect of playing Huddersfield Town? Would you have fancied that again, Gaz?
Yeah, they look like Warnock just turned it all down for you, didn't he? Yeah. Like you were gone when Warnock came in, and then obviously like we thought it were going to happen. But
Guys, honestly, I came on here and I had to drink a bottle of full whiskey before I came on here to talk about Town before Warnock came in. It was that bad, honestly. I wasn't in a good state, were I, lads? And then, but the thing for these boys is because when they did the podcast when we were in the Premier League and we lost every week 4-1. They had a lad called Sean Making on, and somehow I made it even more depressing. So, it's, but that's why I enjoyed it. It's kind of psychosomatic or whatever the term is, where we'd be losing every week, and then I'd just watch Jace come on the podcast, and it'd cheer me up a little bit. So.
Mate, last season was tough.
Yeah. But I will say this, really right? We've all said about the best manager out of all our teams, the best the best moment on this podcast by anything. When Lewis ripped the Bradford Park Avenue, whatever he was, secretary or
Martin Knight. Martin Knight.
That was one of the best interviews I've ever seen on any TV station or channel going. The fact that you knew factually everything, and he was like, I don't think you're quite right against that, Lewis. No, well, I am right because I know my facts. It was like watching the male version of Anne Robinson rip somebody, and I thought you should have said to him, Martin, you are the weakest link. Goodbye. The fact he said he was going to resign live on air was tremendous.
That did happen. To be fair, I will put out since then, though, Lewis, things between you and Martin are fine. Like I keep track on social media.
It was fine on the night, wasn't it? It was respectful.
Yeah, it was one of those situations, wasn't it, where it just kind of, I think it was tensions were boiling and it just needed to happen. And I think the noise from joking aside, the Five Avenue fans, but there's a few more of us, started to get a little bit, kind of, it just needed to happen. And I think, from Martin's perspective, fair play came on. And I think, there's always been that mutual respect between me and Martin. We've known each other. And, I was probably one of the first people to speak to Martin when Lewis Knight joined about 3-4 years ago. So that's how we got to know each other. And then obviously Martin's worked his way to become his director of football operations. So when you become in a position like that, you become accountable for stuff, don't you? And I think when that comes into play and, your season's going upside down and players are leaving and you don't know what's going to happen and you might get relegated, questions are going to be asked, as chatted on earlier. So, it was good fun, wasn't it? It was great. I loved it.
I was eating popcorn when it was happening.
Well, there was one thing I was going to ask you about that, Lewis, because, we're talking about what avenue you do for the next season. But for me, it just feels like cutting costs, sustainability. Yeah. And, you brought it up with Martin on the night. It's how do you marry that with ambition and trying to give the fans hope? I don't see Avenue having a great season next year. I really don't.
That's the biggest question in football, though, for every level, isn't it? Is ambition versus sustainability across all levels, really.
And I think what's been difficult, like I mentioned earlier, we've had some really poor seasons where we've been battling against relegation. There's been a realism to that fact where we know that we're not going to compete with a lot of big teams in that league. There's 2 or 3, 4 potentially full-time teams in their division. In that division, you look at Fylde, where probably their budget, and I'll be honest, is probably 8-9 times as, and that's not, and that's true. You know, there's players that I know that, from what we've heard, are on an unbelievable amount of money compared to our lads who were having to almost pay themselves subs to play. So, you know, I think there's a just complete different end of the scale between a lot of teams in there, and I think from our perspective, it was frustrating because we were good enough to stay in that division. And I've said this before, that division is not as strong as what it used to be. There's no Yorks, there's no Halifaxes, there's no the big Chesters that it's been in the past. You know, Salfords, Stockports, they've all gone. So to stay in that division, arguably for me, was probably a little bit easier. And that's where it's been disappointing. So in terms of cutting costs, I agree, Steve. And I think that's where it's really hurt, because the club is starting to try and do a lot of work off the pitch. Brilliant, superb. The stadium's starting to get a little bit better. Still needs work. Still needs tidying up a lot more. You know, the academy's at the moment proving all right. Tom and the guys, Tom McStravick is doing some really good work with Pat Maguire and the rest of the team. You know, finished second behind Wrexham by 2 points, which was a phenomenal achievement. But let's be honest, we're all fickle football fans, and you want to see your first team do well at 3 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. You're not bothered if you've got a fancy stadium and your academy are doing all right on a Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You want to be beating teams at 3 o'clock at home. And I think that's where, you know, there was a bit of frustration where, you know, we knew the budget wasn't massive, but we were good enough to stay in there. And I think from Mike's perspective, he answers some of the questions. Whether we agree with it or not is entirely people's opinion. But at the end of the day, now we've got to this point where, you know, something needed to change, and it still needs to change. You know, Gareth, who's the owners, you know, put up £1.8 million worth of loans into equity now. So it makes the club a little bit more attractive for a prospective or, investment to come in, because you haven't got that, you know, a level amount of debt potentially to come into. And the club does need extra investment on the pitch because, like you said, Steve, years and years, the money's just seemed to either be cut or it's remained the same, and everybody else has grown and grown and grown because of what they've got going on. So I think for us, we just need to go out and find a little bit of extra support for Gareth. I think it's a superb gesture. Do I agree with everything he's done in the past? Absolutely not. Do I think this is an unbelievable gesture? Yes, I do. And now the club now need to use that and harness that and really go and promote it to what they're capable of doing. Because, like I said, realistically, are we a National League North club? Probably just. That's at a push. We're nowhere near National League club standard. Absolutely nowhere near EFL standard. I remember years ago, you know, people coming out saying 5-6 years time we can be a football league. No, absolutely not. Let's get a grip. We're nowhere near that big. Northern Premier League is probably our standard, but when you've got a taste of something like you've had in the National League North for 12 years, you enjoy it, don't you? You know, it's like going to a, you know, fast food restaurant and getting an apple pie at the end of it. Always tastes nice, doesn't it, at the end of your meal? So it's one of those situations where you've got to learn from them mistakes, because a lot has been made, and now unfortunately something like that's got to trigger a reaction, and hopefully that has happened. Will we get the best players division? No, but what we need to do is get, you know, bang for your buck. Now you've got to get the right players, so the budget that fits, and players who are wanting to play. Luckily, we've got a management duo where a lot of players want to play for. My worry is, you know, you look at it on the flip side, where if Brown and Bosch weren't to stay, luckily they are, you know, what does your squad look like? We've been down that road before and it was an absolute nightmare. You know, we lost the first 2 games 5-0 with kids who were 18, 19, who were just nowhere near good enough for that level. Now we've got players who are wanting to play for the manager. I'm not bothered if they want to play for a shirt. They're not going to be having new fans. I'm not bothered about that. I'm not even bothered if they don't want to play for the fans. It's as long as they play for each other and the manager, because ultimately that will mean that the fans are quite happy to come on a Saturday afternoon and watch your team. So, yeah, there's got to be a lot of work done. But you know, you've got to almost change that DNA, like I mentioned earlier, from just being happy where you are to actually now you got to be taken seriously and not necessarily go for it and prep the club at all. But you've got to have that winning mentality to go, actually, you know what, we've got to get back up there as soon as we can.
I kind of want to segue from Avenue into the rest of non-league before we wrap things up, really. And Lewis, the side that did stay up from our region last season was Farsley Celtic. It's been quite a drastic summer of changes already, and we're only in mid-June. Of course, Russ Wilcox, the management, and the management left. In has come I'll be honest, something that caught me completely, like, blindsided me. Anybody remember Clayton Donaldson? He's back as Farsley manager, along with former Guiseley boss Danny Ellis as a assistant head coach, Tom Morgan, who is a renowned goalkeeper and now coach around the area, as well as Gareth Liversidge, who's kind of a physio, but also taking more of a role coaching-wise as well, Lewis. So they're going down the untested route, but it's certainly intriguing.
It's not the traditional way to do it, is it? And I know that obviously we know, the likes of Pav Singh as well. Pav's there is almost that football technical director, whatever we want to call these people now. But Pav's got experience around the local area and he knows, some good players and a system. So it's a different way of doing it. Will it work? I'm not too sure. It's probably happened a little bit in the past. To use Alex Sells as an example at Avenue. We had Martin Drury and Jamie Price took it on at the same time just after John Deasy left. Both were playing managers and it probably just didn't work. I think it probably came a little bit too early for Martin, if I'm being honest. Now look at him, he's up at, Man United Academy teaching the next stars of the world. I think that's where, the experience, like we said earlier, will stand you in good stead. For Farsley, we talk about managers of the season. I think Russ Wilcox has got to be up there to keep that side in that division. They were brilliant to stay in that division. I don't think many people had them to stay in it. They did. Survived on the last day by a point. They had the second worst goal difference across the season, but they've still done the job. And I think that's what we were mentioning in a lot of probably other podcasts with all those guys as well, is you've just got to pick up victories here and there. The unexpected games that you might just get a point out over 3 points, that will make a massive difference. And this is where Farsley stayed up. They beat Gloucester at home, beat Brackley at home, beat Kings Lynn at home and away, and Kiddie away. Kiddie have gone up and have beaten them away from home 2-0. That's what's kept Farsley's division. They've not had a massively strong record, but they've got 5 wins against teams who were in that top 6. That has seen them get survival. We lost arguably one of the best players with Jimmy Spencer leaving, but Frank Malone stood up to the task. Frank's been a great striker for him. He's put a few goals in, but he's gone to Scarborough. So they've somehow got to replace that. You could say that like replacement's Clayton Donaldson, but he's got a job to do on a dugout as well. So,
I was going to say replacing. They've been well and truly at the replacement side of things. Well before they even announced the management team. From what I can understand, there was a lot that was having to go through the LMA to get everything sorted from that sort of point of view. But as you say, Pav Singh in particular has been instrumental in making recruitment over the last several weeks, including George Smith, the left back, talented left back who joins from Guiseley, Darren Stevenson, who's come in from Chester. Both the Atkinson brothers are back in Ben and Chris. Honestly, there's about half a dozen more as well. They have been so busy already in the window. It's like they just, it's honestly, it's comparable to somebody playing Football Manager.
And I think you're right. And I think obviously we've probably had Clayton in the back of the mind or known that he's almost agreed it. So that's the benefit of having somebody lined up, because I'm sure he'd have been involved in recruitment discussions. The players you've mentioned are decent players for me. The standout one is Connor Branson, who's come from Alfreton. I mean, Connor is a good quality National League North player. I'm surprised he's actually gone to Farsley. I'd have loved him at Avenue. I know there were talk, links and talks, potentially happening, but he's gone to Farsley, which is fair enough because you're playing a higher division. You can. I think from Farsley's perspective, from next season, you've got teams who've come up who've done reasonably well. Tamworth have stormed that league. They're coming up, but you've got teams who are, probably again who are going to be in and around that relegation zone. You probably throw Rush Hall into there. You probably throw Warrington Town into there. South Shield you'd expect to kind of go well, but again, an unproven manager in Julio Arca. Many people know him.
Yeah, they're not investing as much either as they have, aren't they? They're not investing quite as much as they had. So
if Farsley stay in the league this season, then they've got a potential to kind of break away and become that Premier non-league club. I think for a little bit like they were in the old conference days when the old Sitanta Cup and all that kind of stuff, where we're on TV and they were the likes of James Knowles and Ryan Serrant, etc., all playing for him. But I think Farsley have done remarkably well to stay up. I've said, having watched them quite a few times this season, they're probably one of the most dangerous teams on the counter-attack, and they've done that really well. They've played to their strengths. What they've now got to do is sort the defence out. because that's a worry. Being second worst goal difference in the league is a big worry. And I've not, the left back's left. I've heard there might be a couple other changes as well. So that's got to be a bit of a restructure. So Fans are going in next season as a complete new rebuild. So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen down there?
Yeah, where do you kind of rate the idea in terms of, Clayton Donaldson, vastly experienced EFL striker. Obviously, he's a Bradford lad, so he's familiar to the area. And obviously, to be back then with someone like Danny Ellis as well, who we know what his coaching level's like and playing abilities like. How do you kind of think it's going to work out?
I think
it's that, isn't it? It's that.
I think you flip a coin, don't you? I think it's as simple as that at the moment. I don't think we know what's going to happen. Clayton's probably it is his first managerial job, even though he's going to be playing as well. Big task. Danny Ellis, I'm expecting to be on the pitch as well. He's had a taste at Guiseley, so obviously knows how that's worked out. I mean, you've got Tom Morgan and Gareth as well on the side. So listen, it's going to be a really interesting balance and vibe down there at the Citadel, because you haven't got somebody who's going to be in a dugout for 90 minutes, barking orders all the time and a consistent voice. It's going to be changing. So listen, how it works out, I'll be honest, I'm a bit skeptical. But you know what? Sometimes football can be a funny old game, can't it? And it might just work out perfectly for them.
Yeah, the one transfer in they could probably still do with is a new pitch being transferred in, because it's still that potato field down at Throstle Nest. I refuse to call it the Citadel. It's Throstle Nest.
It's a beautiful pitch, yeah.
Guiseley Lewis, of course, a lot of work being done by Phillips down there at Nethermore, and again the recruitment has been busy. Prince Polo has come back. The one that I'm most excited about, and I'll be honest, if it had been this player 3 or 4 years ago, I would have been more excited. But in comes a 33-year-old Tom Denton, who is, for those of a non-league persuasion, I appreciate the rest of you all there bored to hell now, but Tom Denton is a goal-getting giant.
Listen, I think, I'm yes, he is. Yeah, absolutely.
or at least he was.
But I'm going to throw a Stephen Downs butt into this. I don't think he's as good as what he may have been. Having seen him at Alfreton last season, and he came on and played against us, he was a different kind of player. But listen, he's got a job to do, hasn't he? He's 6'6", 6'7". He's a target man. He knows where the back of the net is. It's going to be difficult to probably play on some of the 4G pitches, I think, for him. Which is going to be a test, because guys are going to have to swap and change how they play and a style of play that they want to do. But from last season, you look at guys they dealt with, they've rebuilt pre-season under Danny Ellis and Danny Forrest. Then they've had a bit of an okay-ish start before starting to wobble a little bit. And then they decided to change manager. Danny Ellis has gone. Danny Forrest has gone. In comes Paul Phillips, who brings his own players in. So the squad's been rebuilt probably 2 or 3 times across the season, which is, again, not uncommon in non-league, but the consistency, again, to get promoted is what you want. Then I think under Phillips, me and you were there, Chris, against Halifax earlier in that FA Trophy game, you could sense that Phillips is a colourful character. He knows what he wants from his players. And you know that if you're going to play for him, you've got to do what he says. But, the win against South Shields, when you look at that seemed to be a turning point. If you beat the top of the league, 2-1, Whittam's in the form of his life. It just seemed to be a really good feel about it. But then I think after that, the defeat at Radcliffe, it just kind of faded away. And when he finished 13th, it's a very average season for Guiseley. Would he have taken that? Probably not, if I'm being honest. Before a ball had been kicked, I think the way the season materialised, I think you probably do take 13th. But when you look at some of the signings, Platt's coming in from Hyde. I think it's a great signing as well. They're going to miss Ross Daly in the midfield, so obviously Prince is there in Tiggy as well.
Prince is some player. I really like Prince Polo. Really,
I
think
he's a great player. I think one of the big losses, Cam Mason, I think that were expected to be the number 1 goalkeeper. If I'm being honest, I think he would have been up there with 3 other 4 keepers as the best one in MPL, but he's gone. And they've got the lad in from Runcorn as well. So that's going to be a big one. So there's going to be a lot of teams who are going to be looking at guys and thinking, they're going to be thereabouts. Phillips has got the track record of getting in around the playoffs. because he's that manager where he wants absolute everything from his players, which is understandable. It's again that squad depth and how they start the season. They've got to give Phillips a full season for me. You can't give him half a season like we did with Ellis and Forrest because it just doesn't work.
The one that we haven't touched on, I just wanted to mention to you, of course, is the lad from Brighouse, Lawrence Sorrento, who, of course, had a pretty good season for Brighouse last year, chipped in a good few goals, only 26 years of age. Obviously, Guernsey fans will be looking at his signing, hoping, please be the next Aaron Martin, given how well that worked out a couple of years ago from Brighouse to Guiseley, and then before he went on to Harrogate.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. And, former Bradford City Academy product as well. So he's from the local area. He knows what Guiseley are about. And I think, there's going to be then comparisons, whether it's fair or unfair, it's going to happen, unfortunately, for the kid. But what he's shown is, he's capable of finding the back of a net. And at this level, that's what it counts for. Sometimes you don't need to be the greatest footballer. Once you get a chance, you can score. Let's be honest, you look at Andy Cook at Bradford City. Is Andy Cook the world's, the best footballer in League Two? Probably not. But he knows where the back of a net is. And once you get him a chance, he's likely to put the ball in the back of a net. That's a big difference. So, and they've signed a left back as well from Brighouse. So, they've got the scouting pretty spot on at the moment, guys. They've signed, they're almost casting the net towards the northwest and getting in towards Yorkshire again, which is a positive because, obviously we've known in recent years it's gone as far as South Yorkshire, Birmingham, and I think that's the continuity of team spirit can potentially be affected in travelling and training outside of Guiseley's. It's a big thing. And when you get, players in around the local area and you get your dressing room set up and people can almost meet up for a bit of a social, and it's easy to get to training. You're not spending 2 hours on the road to get to training, especially when you're part-time. It's a big factor. So, you know what? It seems steady away for Phillips at the moment.
Yeah, when you consider, of course, Russ O'Neill. Sorry, Steve, go on.
I was just going to say Tom Denton, cricket legend as well, plays his cricket at Shepley, and they're doing all right at the moment in the Huddersfield Cricket League. So he's handy at putting the ball in the net and also whacking it for a couple of overs as well. So
just wanted to finally with Guiseley, obviously with the fact that you touched on, obviously Paul Phillips has got that knowledge in particular of the Manchester and the Northwest scene. Russ O'Neill, of course, is still there as director of football, and he's got that knowledge of the lower levels, frankly, across most of the country, but of course Midlands and Derbyshire and South Yorkshire. Those two certainly seem to be very in tune with each other as a pairing, perhaps more so than when you think back to the years with obviously Russ O'Neill and Marcus Bignott, where they hadn't worked together at all or much of a relationship beforehand. With Paul Phillips and Russ, it just seems to be working recruitment-wise.
Well, it's got to work, hasn't it? It's absolutely got to work. I think you're right. There seems to be quite a good synergy between them both. Obviously, Russ knows the club well enough now to understand what the club needs and probably what the club wants. It's been in quite a tough time over quite a few years, and they've recovered from the conference days and having almost 50 players on the books and all that kind of stuff. It's now seen to stabilise a little bit. And I think them two have just got to work together because, Paul Phillips is a very good Northern Premier League manager. Russ O'Neill is a good football person. So when you put some good football people together, they're probably going to work pretty well together. It's now what can the guys do on the pitch, because I know we know that Paul Phillips will not accept 13th next season. That is absolutely not what he's come to Guiseley to do. His ambition is his ambition will be to get promoted, but he's got to be in the playoffs next season. But there's some competition in and around, the teams that are going to be doing the same. So they've got a job to do. But it seems at the moment that they seem to be steadily going about the business reasonably well, guys. And it will be interesting to see how they go on during pre-season. I think that will be a big factor in how they start that season. If they're kind of doing really well towards the end of it, I'd expect him to be top half. If not, it could be shaky ground.
Yeah, it's certainly a bit of an interesting one. Finally, of the sides that we kind of covered more regularly last season, Liverpool, who of course were relegated to the Northern Premier. I think they got into the Eastern Division, haven't they, after all the reallocations? Again, for them, just a summer of change in terms of the squad and rebuilding with the same management.
It's been, I think it's, if I'm being honest, in terms of what we've talked about across the region, I think Liverpool have probably really, one of those teams that have really struggled this season and have been probably disappointing more than anybody out of everyone in West Yorkshire of how that season's gone. They've taken a lot of years to kind of build the foundations off the field, to get the stadium up to improvements, to get some good personnel into the building. And the season before they've gone unbeaten at home, and then they get in the MPL and just doesn't work out. And it's a shame because they've had the ability to again stay in that division, but they just didn't have the quality to see them through. Losing Pav, I think, was a big factor in that. That's a huge say. And I know that, I think there was a couple of coaches in and around that started to help him and kind of assist that, but it just never really got going, did that season. And especially when they're unbeaten at home in the season before, they've come into this league and I think they've had the worst home record out of everybody in that division. And that's, again, to the point we're speaking about Bradford City earlier, your home form is just vital to any kind of success, whether that is staying in a division, getting playoffs or getting promoted. And I think, Liversidge will be bitterly disappointed at that. Will they come back stronger? I think they've got an opportunity to do it. They can do it. It's now bridging that gap between the MPL 1 East and the MPL, because I think there's quite a significant gap between them at the moment. Unless you've got a little bit of money behind you, which obviously likes the Macclesfield and Worksop do, they'll be strong in the MPL. But if you haven't got that money, even at our level, it's going to be a tough one for Liversidge to be an established MPL team.
I think you mentioned it earlier, Lewis, and Steve backed it up as well, that West Yorkshire on the whole, though the non-league scene is very, very strong. There's so many clubs though on your doorstep for the Leeds and the Bradford and the Huddersfield fans, that when their sides aren't playing with international breaks or whatever, there's a lot of great non-league football on the doorstep.
Yeah, I absolutely do say this, and obviously the guys on here will, are knowledgeable and know the football as well, and they'll know a lot of teams and players and people who play and support these teams. But I generally think it's as strong as it ever has been in a long, long time, the non-league scene. And I think, again, it is down to money, a lot of it. There's teams in the MPL who are spending a lot of money. You only have to look at what Macclesfield are going to do next season and what the players they're signing. It's blowing teams out of the league. They're almost blowing some of the teams in the National League North out of the level as well, and what they're potentially going out and signing. So it's been successful in terms of, I think, non-league. Brighouse have done really well coming 8th under Veer Powell. They've recruited likes of Luke Dean for next season, so you'd expect them to be kicking on. Bit of a gap to get into the playoffs, but they're capable of doing it. Links with Huddersfield as well, potentially to get some young kids and help that development for Steve's team. Ponty and Ossett will be wanting a bit of a better season. And when you look at the NCL, I mean, for me, this is one where I will be focusing a lot. And I think we're talking like this a lot next season, the North East Counties League. We've got this season Emily, Garforth, Golka, Silsden, Albion Sports, who are moving back to Bradford, back at Horsefall from Farsley, Thackley, Eccleshill, Frickley. Next season, you throw Camping in there. It's almost the West Yorkshire League in itself. And I think that league is going to be a real, real tasty league. Eccleshill have got Lee Elam back. They want to improve on finishing 15th. Thackley will have Tom Greaves and Chippendale in there. They'll be looking to recruit and do better than what they've done at 14th. Emily, like we mentioned earlier, have performed very well, winning a local, county cup as well. Garforth finishing 4th. The list goes on, but that league is going to be, for me, a real intriguing one to look at. And Campion coming up, which probably next question is going to be about, it's going to be a real good test for him, because you're probably going to get almost every few games a derby.
Yeah, I was just about to say, to be fair, that it's just mad how there's all these West Yorkshire sides that are in the Northern Counties East League, and then you look to the west, and you've still got Steeton, Ilkley, and Barnaldwick Town split across 2 divisions on there as well, and it's just nuts.
Just can't fit them all in, Chris. There's too many of them.
I'm trying to figure out who I'm going to adopt as my second team. I'm kind of torn between Avenue and Halifax at the minute.
Oh, we should do a draw. We should stick them all in a hat, and all of you that are still, EFL
pre-season. Let's do it.
Yeah,
I'm thinking,
and pull out a second team each, especially in the Northern Counties East League at this rate.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, and I can adopt him as my second team then. Get to a game.
Let's
or
do
two,
that.
yeah.
Free season. Let's go jump on again.
They'll probably do better than your first team, won't they? So,
no argument.
Steve's
here.
coming
No
in
argument
deep, and he's coming in hard.
Right, do you know what? I can't wait for that Leeds Huddersfield game this season. Oh,
yes, I can't wait for you to come on that and say, "Oh, we're going to smash you 3-0. We've got all these players." and then afterwards, you'll be just so down and depressed. Little old town.
I'll be cancelling the show, mate. The channel, but I'll be closing the channel down.
I will say.
We won't even have that
video.
video.
Do you know my it's a bit crap to say this, but when it came out with the Radrizzani thing and he was going to sell Ellen Road, I was like, I dare you. Please sell it. Please. Just sell it and start building houses on it in time for the new season. It'd be great, wouldn't it? And you have to go play it, some like nondescript Leeds club like Beeston FC or
We've
whatever.
been in worse positions, man. I remember when they were talking about us playing at South Leeds Stadium. You remember that?
Listen, you have been in worse positions because in 1920 you didn't even have a club and we created you again, so you should be thankful.
God,
what do you mean
Steve's on one, innit?
Have you not read? Do you not go on Google, Steve? Do you not want? There's a little thing called Google and Wikipedia. Go have a read.
I know most of Huddersfield Town's history is from 100 years ago. But...
Steve, most of the stuff that Brownie searches on Google, we can't share on the
podcast. No, I agree. That it's a family show, is it? I agree.
It's after the watershed. It's fine.
But yeah, if you go on and just have a read, Huddersfield Town recreated Leeds United, and unfortunately, it's.
And then you spend the next 8 years being so jealous.
This is when it comes. We've had a bite, everybody. I've gone fishing and I've come back.
Taking you an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, but that's it. When we come on when we have the Leeds Huddersfield preview, it won't take me an hour. It'll take me about 3 minutes. Anyway, I'm glad that you've had your dream to play with Beckford today on Ellen Road. I mean, I hope it'll become a car park before next season starts. But
I hope you have a really good season, Steve. Good season.
Yeah.
I hope you survive.
That's like you said that like you would saying pavlova is my favourite dessert, and it's only sugar in it.
I personally don't think it'll work with Warnock. I don't think it'll work with Warnock. I said that to you as well, didn't I, Steve?
Steve, you just seem to think that Mark Hughes is a great manager. So your opinion's like,
Oh yeah, Gaz, I was like at start season, I was saying, why didn't Huddersfield go for Mark Hughes? Why didn't before Bradford City got there? But
I do want to ask
Gaz. Were you?
No. Well, I don't see him as a bad manager, but I didn't want to.
You've changed your tune.
No, I didn't know.
Chris,
right,
back me up there.
Yeah, right, I will back you up here. If there is one manager two managers that I've discovered Stephen Downs cannot stand, they're both called Mark, and one of them is at Bradford City.
I just don't like Marks, do I? Let's be honest. But, I was only being nice because Gaz is on the podcast, isn't he? So you know what I mean. I didn't want to like make him upset and cry, and
What, by flicking off Mark Hughes?
Yeah. I've been told that he's a real hero of yours. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't go that far. It would be if he got us promoted. Right? He's still got time to do that, hasn't he?
On a genuine question, we've released Critchlow. So is it fact that he might be coming to City?
That seems very plausible, doesn't it?
And we made Critchlow before you even start, Steve. He came on loan to us for 7 games. And we've made that player. Anyway, as you were.
The non-league board jumping in, say, here we go.
I've never seen Lewis so animated as when he's talking about Bradford City, and
you
can just see the hatred, can't you?
I've seen him more animated on when he's taking Mark on.
He's like George Sakura 2.0, though, isn't
he? He's a good footballer. You can tell he plays it out from the back. He's probably a little bit too good for League Two. I think he's got his eyes on League One. There was a story doing the rounds on Twitter. I don't know how reliable it was, that Peterborough are looking at him. And I think Simon Parker ran an article saying that he fancies playing in League One. You can't blame him.
He played at Plymouth, didn't he? That's your problem. We loaned him to Plymouth in League One, and he had a decent season there. A bit of a loan, and then he came to you guys and has performed. But he probably thinks because he played for Plymouth, he's at that level, isn't he? So,
and I think I think he's having joking aside, having watched him in his early days, you could see they had something a little bit about him. especially in non-league, you see some loan players coming in, you start thinking, actually, are you going to make it into something?
Yeah.
Special in inverted commas. We've seen in the past, we've had Ollie Arblaster at Avenue a couple of years ago. His next minute, he's in England under 18s. He's playing Sheffield United. Andre Brooks is the same. Harry Boyes is the same, playing at Lincoln, Chris. So you see something in some players. I think with Romani, when he came in, he was very raw. But the benefit is, as a young kid, he was a centre-back. He could play centre-back, left-sided defence, left wing-back, left-back. And I think he's progressed on to being a decent player. I think if he gives that move to Peterborough, I think with the development, what they've done with former players to get them back up, I think that's a really solid move for him. And I think he's had a bit of turmoil in his life as well as Romani, and I think he deserves a good break. Does that kid?
He's a centre back though. He's not a full back. Well, personally, from my knowledge and watching him in the academy over the years, he's more of a centre back player.
He's just not got the build.
No, he's not.
Fullback.
He's not. Yeah, or the pace. I wouldn't say he's got the pace either, because he's not.
We coached that out with him, so don't worry about
that. I think he's one of them players that has come out of the town academy, and we've seen lots of them going to non-league and even signed for Bradford and other clubs like that, League Two level, and they're good pros, but they just don't seem to make it. They seem to hit the ceiling, and obviously, if Town were back in League One or God forbid in League Two, they probably would have played for the club more. But just because of the way that Town have operated over the last 10 years, they've had to drop to that level. But they have become quite consistent at that level, which is good to see in some respects.
It's interesting you should say that, because I think he got rave reviews. He was at Swindon, wasn't it? And he got really good reviews at Swindon. And then he went to Plymouth, and he got a bit of a mixed reception at Plymouth. They weren't sure about him.
Yeah.
And then he come to us, and he's done really well for us. Although it was interesting that when we had Platt and Stubbs at centre back, we had a better defensive record than we did when Critchlow was in. But you can tell Critchlow's the better player. It's quite interesting. I don't know whether that's the level that he's playing at, but you can't blame him for wanting to go and try League One again.
Stubbs is a player though. That Sam Stubbs is a player and a half for you guys. He's solid. He's a very good League Two, and I'll be honest, I'm surprised if he'll don't kick on to League One, because he's got something a bit about him. You can tell he's come from that old Alan Stubbs DNA, and he's proper old school, and you know what you're going to get from him.
Just needs to stay fit, doesn't he? Exeter fans said he struggled with his fitness, and I think that's why they probably let him go. But he played at pretty much every game for us since he came in January, so he looks good. Looks good,
Issue with Plymouth, it was just because it was at backside of nowhere, innit? And I think he got a bit homesick, that sort of thing. It was just so far away, and I think at the time they probably didn't give him a lot of support down there. And he's been based up here most of his life, hasn't he? So I think that was probably part to do with it. And like Lewis said, there was a lot, unfortunately going on in his private life that probably didn't help him, and so he's probably rekindled a bit of love back for football at Bradford. It's a shame that you're not going to get him, I'll be honest, because I think he would be one of your best players next season.
Yeah, I don't think they've ruled it out. Like they'd love to get him if they could. I think it'd be really good signing. He's someone who you could probably, if you don't go up next summer, you could sell him on and make some money on him as well, because he is a League One player. You can tell he could play easily at League One. So I'd love to have him back. I hope the Peterborough rumours are true and he does come to us. But that was a story I did read. I think it was yesterday that they were looking at him. So
he might sign for Leeds next season when they're in League One. You never know.
He keeps going.
I'm not even rising to that.
Get him in now. But can I just say, we've had a comment from Michael. Thanks for your comment, mate. They were going to. This is about the Leeds Huddersfield Town thing. So Michael sorted it out for us. He's gone on Google for us. They were going to merge Huddersfield Town and Leeds United when Leeds United were formed in 1919, but the Huddersfield Town supporters objected, along with their manager at the time, the great Herbert Chapman.
So basically,
we objected, and basically,
what that's saying is,
hang on, Jace, hang on, before you come in with your little rhetoric, right? Leeds then folded. Leeds then folded because Leeds there was some scandal at Leeds, and Leeds United was then formed.
Scandal at Leeds.
Yeah, there was. I know it was
basically,
was
Steve. That
early...
means we created you because
well, no, not really. Because we were created in 1908.
Yeah, but if we'd have merged, we wouldn't have been Leeds and Huddersfield, would we? We would have been Leeds United.
Yes. What year were Leeds created? Was it
1919?
What does it say on your badge? Yeah,
1919. Yeah.
Right, town were created in 1908. So it's just pipe down, lad.
Whatever.
Right?
Whatever.
And the
Get
fact
back
that
to Gal Farm.
And it's not even called that anymore. It's called the Johnson Stadium.
The Cal Farm.
Right,
Johnson Smith. I can't remember.
We've had
this
more
needs wrapping up before it goes up another 100.
We've had better heads to heads against you. So I just need to put Jason in his place.
The head-to-head trophy that Huddersfield have got here.
Well, at least we've got a Yorkshire. At least we've got a Yorkshire electricity cup, haven't we? Yeah. Not even Bradford Park Avenue have got that.
I'd have Bradford in there as well. I would.
Yeah. Anyway, all we can say is, and I include Bradford Park Avenue in this, we're bigger than Lincoln City, so it's fine.
Chris is a Lincoln fan, for those who are not too aware on that, but not from West Yorkshire, so we don't mention it.
Born and bred, but yeah.
Exactly. Just before we go then, because we've taken enough of everyone's time, really appreciate you all coming on and giving us a...
I could stay on here all night. This is great fun.
Yeah. So could I could get Jason crying.
Just keep going.
Hey, listen, I'm all right.
You can tell Lewis is newly married.
Yeah, Lewis, you're supposed to be watching Netflix films and having
Love Island,
aren't you? Somewhere.
I'm having a night off. Yeah.
Jason's just sharpening his sword behind him. You can tell, innit?
In all seriousness, I think Lewis, every pre-season for up to how many years, you've had a pretty much comprehensive guide that's stored on your phone of every pre-season fixture that is taking place across all the non-league sides in our region. That needs publishing to Twitter for this time round so that we can use that as a guide. And at some point, so we should definitely get together at a couple of these non-league games in pre-season when you've all adopted your teams.
And it's a great shout, yeah. Cheers, Chris, you've given me a bit of homework. Thanks, thanks. Nobody else can set pre-season off. Well, I'm going to do some digging and find out who's playing who at the park. Brilliant.
You do this every year, and I always message you asking for what's in your schedule.
I'll do it.
My second team is Bodmin Town in Cornwall. That's my second team.
He's going to be loving that Cornish talk.
Someone's getting half and half scarf, aren't we? Yeah.
My final question for you, actually, Lewis, is genuinely, how many games did you rack up last season?
70? I think it was 70.
70.
I want to say 70 because I don't want to say 69. So, 70, I think. And to be fair, that was...
and she's still married,
that was actually less than it should. Yeah, I know. Mate, you're telling me. But actually, that could have been a lot more because I actually was saving for wedding. So the last 2-3 months, actually didn't go to many midweek games. So.
Well, that'll change next season. Then
I think you were trying to cut down the guest list, weren't you? Right, just dump them so I can get to another game midweek.
No. What it was is he was chopping the guest list down because they all had fixtures. All his guests were from these clubs, weren't they? Did you have a date? One of your date nights at Liversidge? I bet it was, wasn't it? I bet it was third date or something at Liversidge FC. Oh, I take it to football, love.
Honeymoon at Brighouse.
I'm there.
Funny you say that. Do you remember, Jason? Do you remember when Jesse Marsh took his wife down to? God, where did they go now? They went to a non-league game, and it was literally Jesse Marsh and his wife rocking up.
It was York, wasn't it?
What at York?
He's so Ted Lasso. He's so Ted Lasso. It's just embarrassing.
Yeah.
Let's not. We can forget about Jesse the better.
You go to York for a lovely. You could do anything. Chocolate factory. There's the Minster, and he wants to go watch
Shambles.
Jesus, wet.
Yeah,
it's talking Shambles. Yeah.
Horrible.
Embarrassing football club.
God.
Let's not.
So
if you're not banking bad karma on this show, then I don't know. The footballing gods, if they're listening, they know what to do.
Let him enjoy his cup final, Brownie. Let him enjoy the cup final. It's fine.
Lads, Karen Matmore scored against Leeds. It don't get any better than that. we've never even heard of the bloke since. So you know what I mean? It's
and we do that. We're the first. We're the gift that keep giving. That's fine.
You are a gift that keeps giving, Jace. I can't lie to that.
Absolutely, no doubt.
It's the best comedy club I've ever seen.
By the way, what do like Bradford Park Avenue fans like think of Leeds? Like, what's that? Do they hate Leeds like the rest of West Yorkshire, or is it like okay?
I think historically, there's a really good connection between Park Avenue and Leeds. I'll be honest, I couldn't care less. But yeah, I think historically, there's been a good feeling, and some Leeds fans do come down, but I couldn't care less. But
good lad, Lou. Good lad, Lewis.
But listen, I think. Yeah, I mean, we've said it, haven't we, about Leeds? The important thing is getting your manager set up, because without that, you can't do much.
It's a big next 10 days. This next 10 days is massive.
And I think when you look at that league next season, I think you are. Sorry, Steve. I think we are capable of getting promoted, but we can only do that with the right people in place. Because if not, it's quite a tricky road, that championship, as we all know, and we could easily finish mid-table. So.
That was a funny one as well, though, isn't it, Lewis? Like you can see it with the teams that were up there this season. I mean, Luton getting promoted, you know, and what they managed to put together. The some of the parts are way bigger than the individuals, aren't they? As they say, and the team, you know, you put something together and you build momentum. Anything can happen. So, like, sometimes you can have the best players on paper.
You've got the right people in place, like we mentioned earlier about all these clubs. You know, you look at City getting Ryan in as CEO. He's now starting to build it. Huddersfield now with Warnock can build on it, new ownership in it. You know, yourselves at Leeds now, it's a chance to kind of rebuild a bit and reset what's happened before. I think you look at Luton, they've had the right people in place for the past 3, 4, 5 years, and they've rocketed through the leagues. They've had a vision, but importantly, they've had a strategy to do what they needed to do, and have played that absolute blindingly well.
But in all seriousness, it's not a big club game anymore. You look at
I agree with that. I agree with that.
Brentford, Brighton, Fulham, Luton, you know, us in previous. Not all the big clubs are in the top league anymore, and these littler clubs, which I agree that Town are one of, you know, are finding ways to big their advantage up. Yes, Brighton are going to be pillared like nothing tomorrow, you know, this season for all their players. But my God, what a team that's been built there, and Tony and the infrastructure that Tony Bloom, the chairman there, who, you know, is a self-made businessman and fan at that club. He's just, you've got to take your hat off, because you know, the infrastructure and the community that he's created around Brighton Football Club is just absolutely outstanding.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that the players get pillaged, because they have the succession plan in place to make sure that it doesn't kill them.
And that's the thing. When a club's got a strategy like that, like Brighton have, it works. And that was my argument with Martin this year. A club has got to have a strategy in place to know exactly what you want to do. You can build for medium, long term, but at the same time, we all want to win a game. Our ultimate dream, as crazy as it sounds as an Avenue fan, is you want to win every game. So your ambition is to be the best team in the league and be top at Premier League. Is that going to happen? Never. It's never going to happen in a million years at the moment. But you've got to have that strategy in place to become the best version you can do. And in a moment, the likes of Brighton are doing that. You know, Leeds could potentially do that. City are kind of hopefully on their way to potentially getting to that point of being, you know, a very established League One team. And this was my point, like I said, about us guys at Avenue. It's been very scattergun. There's no clear plan and transparency about what we're doing. The strategy that the club is going under to make sure that you either stay up or you get promoted and you're sustainable. You know, the word sustainable in my head it's nonsense in football. I don't know what sustainable means, because for me, sustainable it doesn't really work in football. You know, you're going to football to be successful, and you're going to probably lose a fair bit of dollar about it. But what you want to be is you want to be successful, and there's not. And Chris will back me up at this, and Steve, and we've been on podcast. It's not about survival. Survival is your absolute bread and butter. That's your basic. That shouldn't even come into question. It's not survival. It's thrive. It's thriving. You know, don't survive, thrive. That's the biggest thing I think for all of us in West Yorkshire and the rest of the teams. Where, you know, we're all fans at the end of the day of our teams, and you just want them to do well. And when it don't go well, questions are going to be asked, and people have got to accept that. Get the constructive criticism and do something about it, because, you know, we've got the club at the art of what we want to do, and at the end of the day, these guys are custodians and are employed to do that job, which is fair enough. But sometimes it's a benefit to not have that emotional tie to a club. But you've also got to listen to those that do have an emotional tie because they know what's best for the club because they're watching it every Saturday at 3:00. So you've got to listen to them a bit.
And sorry, Steve, go ahead, mate.
I was just gonna say, Matt, just a point on that. The only two clubs that don't lose money in the world are PSG and Man City because the owners don't, they wouldn't even know they'd lost £1 million behind the sofa. But that's what impresses me about the new ownership at Town coming in because, Nagel wants to build a successful team on the pitch, but wants to create a community sort of driven sort of dream around the club and the town and reinvigorate those.
Jason doesn't want to listen to this.
No, and reinvigorate those positive things about Huddersfield Town. And it's unfortunate that Jace don't want to listen to this.
Do you buy that, Steve? Do you really think he's going to come in and do that?
Yeah, I do, because Jake Edwards talked about it today on the live press conference with Neil.
We'll ask Kev when he gets on the podcast, yeah? Super Kevin Nagel.
Hey, listen, I want him to. I won't be as difficult as what Lou was with Matt. I'll be a bit nicer, I think. But I'll still ask the pertinent questions. But yeah, I do think he'll come in and stop throwing your teacups around, Jay.
Listen, I've been waiting for this to arrive, right? I said to Brownie, I says, I'm getting an ice cream tonight. I'm going to get it delivered about 9:30. So that's what I've been waiting for.
You enjoy that cold dessert. But yeah,
I need some. It's red hot.
I know it is. But yeah, I do think that they will create a community sort of vibe around the ground and the town, and that's what impresses me about his plans, and that's why I'm so excited to hear them because I think they've properly thought about it. That's the thing. He's not coming to just buy a football club because he wants to. I think he does want to create something, that's a lasting thing. And he's done that in Sacramento. If you look at what he's done with his club over there,
Sacramento
it's a longer term. He's not just done it for a couple of seasons. It's a proper generational thing, and I think that's brilliant. Yeah.
Well, I know. I agree with that because I think a lot of it's quite cold-hearted, isn't it? I mean, it's even with the 49ers coming in, they're already on about a 3-year business plan, and it seems quite just transactional. It doesn't seem to be that actual kind of love or whatever you want to call it. Gaz, are you happy with City owners at the minute? I mean, where do you stand on how they're doing with everything on that front?
I think it's a really interesting point what you were saying before about all that matters to fans at some stages, like what happens on a Saturday. But you've got to be aware of what's going on, and I think, like you said, that their feeling around Bradford's is really good at the moment. Ryan and Mark have built that together over the last 18 months. Like I said, the support, we're all united, and it was a bit like not discontent, but there was a separation between the fans and the team before that. And Mark Hughes coming in has united everybody, which is obviously it goes a long way, doesn't it? Like you just said before, you've got a vision and you know where you're going and you've got everybody behind you pulling in the same direction. Then if it doesn't happen on a Saturday straight away, hopefully it'll happen on a Saturday a few years down the line or the next season. So I'm really impressed with what's happening. Everyone's united. I'm happy with the way things are going off the pitch, definitely. If we can get results at home, like we've said before, more consistent this season, then hopefully things will be right on the pitch as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's the biggest thing. I think that's the biggest thing with you guys at City at the moment. And like I said, I know we have a bit of banter about City and stuff, but the foundation seems to be being built now. The biggest question mark now is on the pitch. The stuff's been done off the pitch to get into a club in a decent position. The financials seem pretty decent, to be fair, compared to recent years at the moment. It's now actually for Mark Hughes and the rest of the team now to actually say, we've got to do our job now because this club is actually starting to probably get to where it should be off the pitch compared to what it's been like in previous years, and we all know what happened there. But this is a thing. I think it's a massive season, and I think this is where the likes of Ryan is going to be probably expecting a lot from that, and rightly so, because ultimately they're putting a fair bit of money into a team that should be in that top 4.
Yeah, we should be. I mean, and like I said, the worry is this season's going to be even harder than last season. You look at all those teams that are like going down and coming up. It's going to be tough, but we've got to do it. We've got the expectations there for a reason, and we've got to fulfil that expectation eventually. Like I said, things are going right off the pitch. Let's get them right on it as well.
And I think the biggest thing is coming out of League Two, and we'll probably see it with other teams. But if you include yourselves at City going there, you only have to look at League One and the teams that are in that division. It is an absolute monster of a league. Is that at the moment with some of them clubs, and then we're talking big clubs in there. So I think it's going to be a real challenge from it. I think in a couple of years, where going from League Two to League One is going to be a massive jump. And you only have to look at the teams coming down. MK Dons, you wouldn't fancy them to come down, despite what people think of them, but they've come down. Markham, obviously, with your friend Derek coming back as well. So there's got that League One is an absolute beast. So it's going to be a real interesting one to make sure that not only can you perform on a pitch for League Two, but you're ready to hit League One running, because the last thing you want to do is get promoted and then come straight back down.
Even Morecambe, like you're saying about Morecambe, they're saying they're going to have the biggest ever League Two budget now, aren't they? They were struggling financially. I'm not sure what's going on exactly. I haven't followed it, but now they're saying that they're going to have money to spend. So even they're going to have ambitions this season. You look at Accrington, who've come down. They were flying until like this season just gone. John Coleman does a great job at Accrington. They're the club that's got a club that people should follow. They've got the community behind them. They're really united. Everyone's pulling in the same direction. If you can get a club like Bradford doing the things that they're doing, which I think now we are starting to do the things that they're doing, then we should be able to go that step further and be sort of unstoppable in League Two.
I think there's a boxer called Tyson Fury that's had a word with some people at Morecambe and probably put a few.
Oh, did he get involved?
I think.
He
think
he was going to. He always said that he would want to, but then when it came to it, he always kind of backed away from it in the end. But
I think privately he's probably put a few pennies in. To be fair, he probably ain't got time to publicly do anything, but privately he probably has made a big donation to the club. But Lou just makes a good point on League One. That's what it used to be like years ago when us, Leeds, Notts Forest, Southampton, Brighton. Yeah. Like League One were like, it was bigger than the Championship. You used to have like Scunthorpe in like the Championship, and so League One used to be like massive years ago, and it's got like that a little bit last season where you like to Plymouth, Ipswich, Charlton, Sheff Wednesday. I do think though that the bottom of League One, there's not a lot of good teams at the bottom of League One, so I don't see that gap being as massive. I actually think that the National League and League Two are very close in terms of their jump up. I don't see the quality being massive between them leagues either. Maybe I'm wrong about League One and League Two, but I just think the bottom of League One isn't the best quality football that you can attain really.
League One will be weaker this year, I think, with Sheffield Wednesday going up and Plymouth going up and
Ipswich
going up. It'll be a weaker league.
Yeah, it'll be a weaker, and that's why the Championship is the strongest it's ever going to be. I mean, you look at the teams in the Championship, and it's just mad. It's just a crazy league. Is that
great?
I mean,
yeah, can't wait, Brownie.
Of course it is.
But interestingly, like Jay said about 2 hours ago, Leicester. I don't think Leicester will be. I think there's big problems there.
I think Southampton are the best place out of the three of them.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. I mean, they're going to have Russell Martin, so they're going to have 98% possession of the ball and do absolutely nothing. But because that's fair. That is so fair. Because that's what they did at bloody Swansea. But I do think that there's big problems at Leicester. I think you guys are sorting your stuff out. Southampton's probably the best placed club. West Brom, if they keep hold of Corberan, will probably have a decent year. Norwich will probably have a decent year as well.
Norwich have made some good signings.
I just thought of the perfect thing.
I think Watford probably push on. So
Leeds get Corberan and we beat Huddersfield Town. That would absolutely tell me that would just be beautiful, wouldn't it? Come on. That would just
I'm
fully behind Corberan now.
Sure, 2 cup final. You're playing against.
He's not our cup final.
You're playing against the original club. But all I want to say is the Championship is going to be mad this season. Yeah. I don't think you can call. It'll be very difficult to call the top 6. I think this year.
You're not gonna have a Burnley or a Sheffield United run away.
No chance. Not this season. Be too close. And I also think you'll have to stay up on more than 53 points, which will probably be the highest that you'll ever averagely have to stay up on as well.
Yeah.
I think that's how close the league will be. We'll probably get to the last 4 or 5 games of the season, and there'll probably still be 12 teams that can get relegated and 12 teams that could go up. That'll be how crazy it'll be.
It genuinely could be that mental. Along the lines, though, actually, of all the fiction stuff, that segues nicely into fixture release day. Of course, the Premier League is tomorrow. Not that we care about that anymore, eh, Brownie? Championship.
Jason's eyes there were daggers.
Championship League 1 and League 2 next Thursday. National League and National League North and South, I think, is the 5th of July. Lewis, have the Northern Prem told us when we're getting the fixtures, or is that just going to be a post-it note the day before?
Yeah, we'll just pick it out of a bucket, see what happens.
That's usually how it works at that level, to be fair. I mean...
Typical English football, FA.
I know that we're probably at MPL is going to be one of the latest starting. I think we're talking 12th of August, I think.
Crikey.
Yeah, we start on the 5th, don't we?
Yeah, you guys start on the 5th, and I think there's even is it the NCL? I think kick off at the end of July.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's just crazy. So there's a lot of changes I think happening with fixtures.
So we get Leeds on first day.
Friday night.
Opening fixture Friday night, Leeds v Town.
I will just support Park Avenue if that happens. Just
so we know this happens in non-league, right? So local teams get each other on a certain day during the calendar. Chris, you'll know this. Yeah. So imagine this would happen if you were in non-league. God bless you. That's probably never going to happen. But you'd play each other on Boxing Day, and the reverse fixture would be on New Year's Day.
Oh my word! We did that against Scum this year, though, didn't we? Because of the funeral. Yeah, so we ended up playing Manchester United twice in 3 days, Wednesday and Saturday.
Yeah, that's what it. Yeah.
And did you get beat both times? I can't remember.
We drew at their place.
But it don't matter anyway, because you won't be playing them for a while, so it's fine. Only maybe odd cup game here and there every year.
Good God, he's got
some buzz out of it.
Gaz, get yourself in this league.
I was looking forward to this, though.
We're trying.
This is what I hoped it would be.
Marcus trying as well.
We could have a 3-way rip apart here. There might not be any of us left by the end of the season.
To be fair, I was just thinking, it's a bit of a shame because obviously, for having you and guys, there was a little non-league derby still down there. For Leeds and Huddersfield have got each other. It's a bit of a shame Halifax didn't get promoted last season, just to give Bradford and Halifax fans that direct rivalry as well.
Yeah, can we skip League One and if we get promoted and go straight into the Championship?
Hey, that's in fact, sod it, Lou. You take over Bradford Park Avenue and come up with us. Come on.
Let's do it. Yeah, we don't like City anyway, so we'll skip up to Championship.
Yeah. You both come up together. It's like little brother and big brother come up together.
Which one's the original club out of you two? I'm not. Let's not go there. Let's not.
You've asked the club work with. So. You've asked the question now. You've asked it now.
Yeah, the real story is Park Avenue, right? I'm pretty sure the true answer to that is Park Avenue.
Yeah.
I just want to ask Jace a question. Just one question.
I just want you all can see that this ain't me, right? This ain't me directing.
I can't see you because I'm technically
I didn't ask you, Steve.
But is there more chance of that ice cream melting before that you get promoted to the Premier League again, or? What do you think?
I mean, considering the fact that it's already melting, I would definitely say yes.
That's all right then. That's all right. We've got his answer.
I don't think
Here we go then. Here we go. Let's throw this out there, right? This time next year, whoever finishes higher than each other has to wear the opposition football top.
Me and Jason will never meet unless it's like at a football game, and I'm not paying £50 for a Leeds top. He can donate me one if he wants.
I'll post you one.
I'll send you one.
Hey, yeah, I'll say, yeah. If you want, I had an idea. I don't know if Leeds have a foundation, but I was just thinking we could, if you wanted a bet, we could pay £20 for whoever finishes higher to each other's foundations.
That's not a bad shout.
Doing it for charity as well, Jace. Come on, get on with it.
I can definitely do that. I mean, whether I think we go up or not, I still think we'll finish in front of town. So
I know Leeds fans have got stone of hearts, but come on, that's a nice gesture, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm down for that. I'm down for that.
Yeah,
Steve, it's all right because I'm only one Town fan. Steve, are you in it? 20 quid? Are you?
That means it's 40 quid though for you, Steve.
No.
Yeah,
There's only one of me.
Yeah, there's two of us.
That's right. We'll just bring back Sean Making as well. He can chip in. You can come back, Sean, but he's going to cost you 20 quid.
Yeah.
And you've got to wear a Leeds shirt. Hi, Sean. Yeah.
Oh, I like that. We'll do that. I think
we put it through enough that
20 quid, Jace, on whoever finishes higher.
I'm down for that.
So
I'm down for that.
I love it how we'll finish first and win the title, and you might finish second.
Hey, listen, I'd pay 20 quid for that right now. I can give a shit. Sorry. I couldn't care less.
It's all right.
Get us back out of this league.
We're past that British watershed moment, so it's fine. Stephen and Chris won't get sued by British Telecoms or whatever.
It's all right. It's YouTube and social media. I think there's a lot worse on social media than one person saying shit. We're fine.
I am half of Brownie's things on it, innit? So.
And on that note,
yeah,
we will wrap it up. If you've enjoyed watching the video, please do smash a like on it. Also, subscribe to the channel.
If anybody's watched this from start to finish, by the way, please comment and let us know because fair bloody play if anybody has stuck with this for 2 hours 20 minutes.
Yeah, Gaz just keeps talking crap, doesn't he? It's just
not picking on
you fired shots at everyone tonight, Steve. Shocking.
Just want to say as well, I'll be the sensible one here. Cheers, guys, to you guys have been amazing over here. I think it's been a absolute brilliant podcast. I think listening to us all absolutely talk rubbish about our own teams has been a right laugh over it, yeah. But yeah, I think top job, guys. So well done.
No, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you to you as well. You're the ones that make it interesting. We'll be back again in some form, whether we're all on together. I think we should probably do a little season preview together. I think that might be quite fun.
That could be quite interesting.
And maybe some more collaborative videos next season. I think that'll be quite
closer to the start of the season, though, so we know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we can be confident about that bet, then, can't we?
Yeah.
But no, really appreciate it. Thank you to you all as well, giving up your evening to do this as well. And if you've watched along as well, much appreciated. We'll be back over the course of the summer. So any breaking news, any exciting updates, we'll be streaming. And we'll see you again. I've been Stephen Brown. Alongside me has been Chris Bell. Chris, thank you, mate.
Pleasure as always, mate.
Stephen Downs from the Huddersfield Hub. Cheers, mate.
Cheers.
Jason, as always, I'll see you on the stream complaining about Leeds very soon, I'm sure.
Very soon.
Gaz, really appreciate you coming on, mate. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me anytime.
And Lewis, thank you so much, mate. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, guys.
And we'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching.
Take care, guys.